And in the forecast, no rain today, sunny upper 70s, clear low 50s overnight, sunny and 60 tomorrow, more sunshine and mid-60s on Sunday. 68 degrees in Boston right now.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Morgan Stanley with their podcast Thoughts on the Market, offering concise takes on current events and their implications for financial markets. 3 minutes an episode, 5 times a week. Thoughts on the Market.
I'm Henry Santoro. This is GBH News.
Rowdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting as we do every Friday and every Tuesday from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Good morning.
Hey there, Marjorie. 2 things we want to say before we get started today. One, we had an event last night for listeners out at a place called Exhibit A in Framingham, which is a brewery kind of thing. And I dread these things while I'm on the way and I call you on the phone. It was fabulous. Tons of listeners showed up. We really loved it. Thanks to all of them who spent their night with us.
Jim is very shy. You'd never know that really from the radio, but he's very shy person.
And one last thing, I know, mocking me already. One last thing, we have live music on Fridays.
Yes.
We just had this band from Santiago, Chile, Rim Bam Boom, from who are going to be part of the Honkfest over the weekend. Exactly. Let me tell you, if you need a lift in your life, I would get down here pronto. They're going to play in the 1 o'clock hour, and they are insanely good. So that's the housekeeping. Yesterday afternoon, you all know this, President Biden announced he's pardoning thousands of people who were convicted on the federal level for possession of marijuana. Again, just simple possession. Here's Stephen Colbert last night.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is a hell of a Green New Deal.
Thank you very much, Stephen Colbert. It's not as wide-reaching as some of you might think or like. It only accounts for about 6,500 people as opposed to maybe 1 million who've been convicted on the state level for the same thing. This will not affect them, even though in our state, Maura Healey has made pledges that if she's elected governor in November, she'll do the same thing. We want to know where you stand on this. How do you feel about this? Are you happy about this development? Did the president go far enough? By the way, 70% of people in this country, 7 out of 10, support legalization. The president yesterday didn't even call for decriminalization, even though ultimately the power rests with Congress. Give us a buzz or a text, 877-301-8970. You can tweet us at BOS Public Radio.
I just want to add that politicians historically, even back in 2016, both Governor Baker and AG Healey opposed legalization of marijuana.
That's right.
All these politicians, all these cops, it was all going to be a disaster. Everything was going to be, hell on wheels. It has not turned out to be hell on wheels. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of studies that show the massive increase of marijuana use among children was going to be impacted by legalization. That hasn't proved true. But what's really important, Maura Healey says she's going to,
Pardon to do the same thing essentially that Biden did on the state level.
Yes, but the problem is it should be automatic. You shouldn't have to go through this cumbersome application process.
She hasn't announced what she's doing.
She hasn't announced, but that's the way it is now under Baker in Massachusetts. You have to go through this cumbersome application
process. And by the way, I don't know if she said this to us or said it elsewhere. When she was asked in the last, year about her opposition in 2016, I think the word she used was, in retrospect, it was unnecessary. But the bottom line is, and by the way, for those who don't know, marijuana is still classified federally as a Schedule I drug.
Right.
Same class as LSD, I think heroin, if I'm not wrong. And obviously that's something that Joe Biden, even though he hasn't called for decriminalization, would support. 877-301-8970. I want to say what I said one more time.
What?
70% of the people in the United States support this. And like almost everything else in modern day politics, whether it's abortion, where close to 70% of people support Roe v. Wade, people in positions of power, whether it's Supreme Court, Republicans in Congress, don't give a damn what the people think about anything. If 7 out of 10 people support something, don't you think Congress would rush to effectuate that which their constituents support?
If I hear one more person talk about marijuana as a gateway drug, I feel like strangling them. I think there is another gateway drug, which is liquor, and we don't do anything about that. And you could certainly argue that when you look at what's done more harm in society, it's liquor, which has been legal ever since Prohibition, and we saw what happened in Prohibition. Things went horribly wrong, then they pushed it back to be legal again.
Wait, before you take George, I wanted to say one more thing. I don't know who wrote this, and my apologies for not crediting him or her, is they were talking about how almost all the Republicans have been silent about this,
right,
with the exception of Tom Cotton from Arkansas, and whoever the writer was, Tom Cotton, who routinely complains there are not enough people in prison in this country, trashed Joe Biden for this. So it's a good first step. It's obviously an important political statement coming from the President of the United States, but it's really not much more than a political statement.
And one last thing before we get to George, there is an obvious racial discrimination issue here. There are many more African Americans are arrested for marijuana possession than white people, and I think there's no evidence that African Americans are smoking any more dope than white people are.
I think that's right. Now, George from Weymouth, you're first. Thank you much for the call. We appreciate it.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie. First time, long time.
Wow.
Love you guys.
That's nice of you. Thank you.
Not a problem. I just want to say I think it's kind of a desperate last-minute move on Biden's part to appeal to young people. But if he really wanted to motivate them and mobilize them, he should legalize marijuana on a federal level.
Well, George, I'm sure you know, he can't do that. He can call for it, but whether it's decriminalized or it's legalized, which obviously is a slight difference, Congress has got to do that, and the likelihood of Congress doing that is analogous to Donald Trump telling the truth about something. So it ain't happening, even though that's what the American people want. George, thanks for your first call. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970. And correct me if I'm wrong, Margie. I'm going to get this close to right. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 states, I think one of those jurisdictions is D.C., have legalization. Decriminalization is about 30, and medical marijuana being legalized is, I think, 38. So it's
19 states and Washington, D.C. have legalized marijuana. 31 states have decriminalized the substance. Racial disparities in drug arrests persist, even as the legal marijuana industry remains dominated by white entrepreneurs.
877-301-8970.
You mentioned before that 70% of Americans support legalizing marijuana, even though Congress isn't going to do it. Congress basically is on the wrong side of all the issues, practically. Climate, guns,
abortion,
giving tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires. So it's a great thing to know that the Congress, the government that's running the country, is basically opposing what most Americans want.
And the Supreme Court is. And so it says to you, and I don't think we're big enough thinkers to solve this, it says that the structure of our government is wrong in some fashion. That if people who we elect, or we don't elect Supreme Court justices, but indirectly we do through the president, their views don't comport with where the overwhelming majority of people are, that there is something that needs fixing,
Cindy and Swampscott, thank you for calling. By the way, I should give the number again. It's 877-301-8970. You can call us at that number. You can text us at that number.
Hey, Cindy.
Hi, how's it going?
Excellent.
Fine, thanks.
Good. I just strongly feel like no one should ever have been arrested for marijuana possession. Of course, people should be pardoned at the federal and the state level. I support Maura Healey's plan to pardon people who, for arrested. I have a brother who was arrested for marijuana possession. It has ruined his life. It's very hard for him to get a job, and it's just simply ridiculous that he or anyone would ever have to go through that. And,
Cindy,
that's a great point.
It's full of racism. It's full of racism too.
No, you made a point that we should have made. When I said it was a political statement, it does have consequences, like your brother. Some people can't get jobs because of a conviction, can't go into federally subsidized housing.
Can't sign apartment leases. They are hurt in custody cases, and they're hurt in admissions to college. It's absolutely crazy.
It's a great point. Cindy, good luck with your brother, and thank you for the call. We really appreciate it. 877-301-8970.
Who said that no one was arresting people in the halls of Harvard for marijuana? Was that Mayor
Wu?
Wu?
Tito Jackson or Mayor Wu?
Yeah.
Or I can't remember. But during the legalization fight, by the way.
Yeah.
By the way, if people don't recall, just so everybody knows, while our laws are pretty enlightened in this state, None of the 3 laws that were passed in the last 15 years on marijuana were passed by our elected representatives. Originally was of medical marijuana, which almost every elected official opposed.
That's right.
And medical means your doctor can prescribe this to fix what ails you. 4 years later, I think I have the time right. 4 years later was decriminalization. Did the legislature do that? No. The voters did. And then in 2016, I think you said it was, legislature and leaders did not endorse this. Some did. But the people themselves on the ballot had to legalize this.
I think it's because we forget that there's drug use and there's drug abuse, just like with liquor or marijuana or anything else. We have this opioid crisis raging in America. A lot of people get opioids legally when they have operations, the dentist or some kind of operation, but then they're able to get illegal opioids very easily. So it's not as if the war on drugs, as many people have said, has been a failure. You need to treat drug abuse, not put people in jail for drug abuse. And we're so late to the game on this, as we are on so many things. Al from Rhode Island, thank you for calling.
Hey, Al.
Hi.
Hi.
Long-time listener, first-time caller. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make a quick point. If marijuana was legalized, it would allow for research to be conducted.
Wonderful point.
On the plant. It has many negative effects. It has many positive effects, but we don't know them because we don't have the research.
That's
Are you involved in the research, Al?
No, I'm a professor and I teach substance abuse. But
you do?
That's not my main line of research.
Yeah, and so the only research that can be funded, correct me if I'm wrong, is privately financed research, correct? No government money.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's a huge yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, Al. I interrupted you. Shoot.
It's a huge problem because, if it's smoke, does it cause lung cancer? Well, we don't know. It's a very complex substance. There's hundreds of chemicals, and we don't know what's beneficial and for what. We know that CBD can help with autism, perhaps, or with seizures. But again, we need federally funded research in order to really investigate this substance.
Al, I'm really glad you called, and thanks for your work, but that's a really important point. Thanks for calling.
Here's a good text from Clayton and Maynard. I'm as liberal and progressive as they get, but I have concerns about marijuana implicitly being described as being somehow innocuous. It isn't. Many studies have shown it has a non-trivial adverse effect on memory, particularly in developing brains of children and young adults. There are legitimate arguments that alcohol is far worse, but this does not negate the concern. So he's right.
Al's point is right, too.
Well,
Al's making the same point.
Clayton's point is right.
Yeah.
No one, I don't think, is saying that it's innocuous. And we just talked a couple of weeks ago about having more than 1 drink a day for women and more than 2 drinks a day for men can give you cancer. Isn't that what was leading to dread diseases? So no one is saying it's innocuous, but that's different than saying it should be made illegal.
I mentioned a minute ago, before we take a break, of the fear of state officials here to take a lead on this issue. You wrote a column, I think when you were still with the Herald, before you went to the Globe. Didn't you call every single, not every single, most high-profile elected officials?
Yes.
And tell the story, including the one who gave you an honest answer.
Well, this was a long time ago. I remember I called Joe Kennedy, who was a congressman then. I think
Joe
I called
Kennedy,
Evelyn,
the father, not Joe Kennedy,
right, Evelyn Murphy, who was lieutenant governor then. The only person who told me the truth was Joe Malone.
I remember, then the treasurer of the state.
Yeah, and he said, they were all hemming and hawing, John Kerry hemming and hawing. They'd all smoke pot. John Kerry was in Vietnam, for heaven's sakes. And Joe Malone said, I had a great time when I was at Harvard. I smoked a little weed, what the heck, or everybody called it pot back then. But it's rare for someone to, well, I shouldn't say rare, but millions of people who were in college, starting way back in the 70s, smoked marijuana, right?
You know some, I assume. Do you not, personally?
I have smoked marijuana, yes, I have,
You have?
Jim. Yes, I have. And I think I still have a pretty good memory.
Do you remember it was...
Actually, I don't have a great memory, but I don't know if that's age or marijuana.
If people haven't been listening to the show for a long time, one of Marjorie's best experiences with marijuana is when she was at I think it was when you were at Stanford. You were working at the ashram when you were at Stanford, were you not?
I was at the ashram, that's
okay,
right.
and she might have been a little high on marijuana. And what'd you do with bread?
Well, we used to cook bread. I lived in one of these California houses where you couldn't get rid of the hornet's nest because they were all part of nature and all that kind of stuff. And you had to cook the octo-vegetarian meal and the lacto-vegetarian meal and the vegan meal and all these kinds of things. 7 different meals every night. And we made our own bread, of course, which would come out of the oven at midnight. And you know how it smells making bread.
I do indeed.
So in this house I lived in, the bread would come out of the oven at midnight, and I may have imbibed a little bit before midnight, and the bread was still cooking when I ate it, and it was expanding in my stomach, and I was afraid I'd be the headline of the next day's paper, co-ed killed by exploded stomach after smoking marijuana and eating too much bread. Anyway, 877-301-8970 is our number, 877-301-8970. Lee from Texas. Hi, Lee.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie. It's great to talk to you.
Hi, Lee.
Thank you.
I wanted to say that I'm happy that Biden did it. You're right that it's a state issue, and I think we need to follow the money. I know in my state it will never get approved because the politicians are making too much money off private prisons. And
That's a great point.
That is a great point. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
The largest private prison is in Pecos, Texas, and it's owned by the GEO Group. So you can look that up. But yeah, so of course they're getting kickbacks to politicians, and so Greg Abbott would never approve that because it would cut into his little his bank account, really.
Hey, Lee, that's a great call.
You know, Lee, Andrew Cabral, who's the former sheriff of Suffolk County and ran a prison as the sheriff of Suffolk County, has been very critical of private prisons. I mean, the point why, when the government is imposing a sentence on someone, is the government not running the facility at which sentence is being carried out, and the horrible things that private prisons do in terms of like phone calls and all these really cruel and abusive things beyond the cruelty of just being in jail. So Lee, that's a great point.
Say hi to Governor Abbott for Marjorie, though. Marjorie's a big fan, Lee. Thank you very much for the call.
Somebody just texted and said, Marjorie, marijuana is a gateway drug to carpentry.
That's actually a pretty good line.
Okay, we're getting your take on President Biden's pardoning thousands of people federally incarcerated for possession of marijuana. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Next time on The World, Vladimir Putin has given a military promotion to the governor of Chechnya. Ramzan Kadyrov is gung-ho on helping Putin battle Ukraine. He's even suggested using nukes on the battlefield.
But if things don't turn out well for Russia and for Putin, Kadyrov is likely to try to establish, his own state.
A Putin ally smells opportunity on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Comcast. Xfinity Internet is committed to bringing speeds over a gig to power your devices while fitting your needs and a range of budgets. Learn more at xfinity.com/gig. And H&H, the Handel and Haydn Society, performing the glories of Bach. This season opener immerses you in Bach's orchestral and vocal masterworks. October 7th and 9th at Symphony Hall. More at handelandhaydn.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie, and we're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Not only is it a beautiful day to come to the library, as I mentioned, we've got a band from the Honkfest that is spectacular, playing in the 1 o'clock hour. It would really lift your spirits. I'd suggest you join us. If you're just joining us now, we're getting your reactions to the news yesterday that President Biden is pardoning somewhere in the neighborhood of 6,500 people with federal marijuana possession, just possession, convictions, and he's urging all governors to do the same for state offenses where the case numbers are exponentially higher. And as we said earlier, Maura Healey said if she's elected, she would follow through and do essentially what he did. Did the president go far enough, or is this a big step in the right direction? And will it have any impact on the midterms? I'm not sure. Well, maybe it will with younger voters. 877-301-8970.
You're always quizzing me in my marijuana use. Why don't you give us a trip down memory lane and the great Jim Browdy, Pink Floyd highs?
I've never used it. I've never used it.
Okay.
You know why? It's been illegal.
Oh, it's been illegal.
Until recently, so I decided I wouldn't do it.
Yeah. Well,
I would say...
I don't think that's true, Jim.
If there was a mirror going back in time, I would say my use paled next year. It's not a criticism. I'm just saying to put it in context. That's a fair statement, is it not?
I don't know, Jim. I don't know what you were doing as a young and when you were young and irresponsible.
I know what you were doing when you were young.
That's what George Bush said. You know, I was young and irresponsible during the cocaine years. You know what I mean? I was young and irresponsible. And by the way, we're getting a lot of emails pointing out saying you can't say it's harmless. It's nothing, no problem with it. I mean, obviously, there's problems with marijuana. There's problems with liquor. There's obviously problems with harder drugs. But again, how does that translate into we should arrest people and put them in jail? That's the issue.
Well, except let me go a step further. Even though, let me channel Marjorie again. I'm not an expert on marijuana, but I know enough to say
Jim never did it when it was illegal.
When the legalization was on the ballot, and we did a lot of shows on it, and I read a ton, and I didn't know a huge amount about it. I didn't find one credible piece of research that suggests that marijuana at its worst in terms of impact equals the impact of alcohol. And alcohol is legal. So no one is saying there's no negative impact from marijuana. Just comparatively speaking, if you're so concerned about it, then move to make alcohol prohibited again.
Well, the other big difference is marijuana may be psychologically addictive. It is not physically addictive. And it's anybody who's had anybody in their family who has an alcohol problem. Withdrawing from alcohol is a very serious situation that can, in worst case scenario, could even kill you. It's a horrible thing. Joanna from Roxbury, thank you for calling.
Hey, Joanna, what's up?
Hi, so I'm on with my partner, Rokia Begum. On Street.
How you do?
We are co-owners. Thank you. And I'm a long-time listener.
Thanks.
First-time caller.
Thanks.
But we are co-owners of Rooted in Roxbury.
Oh.
We're opening up a dispensary on 331 Newberry Street.
I knew that.
And we're both. Did you? Okay, great. So
go ahead.
Stop by afterwards. So we're walking distance from the library right now. But we just wanted to talk about our shop a little bit and also, chime in on this conversation because it's really important.
Please do, briefly if you can. We got a lot of calls. We'd love to hear from you. So, shoot.
Yeah, Rokia, what would you like to add about our shop and just about our experience opening?
I think, some of the things that you were discussing, as two women trying to open shop, Black and Brown owned, it's been, totally different kind of experience, and making it also being able to be in Newberry Street, those things that don't really happen for women or people that currently are from neighborhoods like Dorchester, Roxbury, who we are from there.
Well, can I say to both of you, you both know this, but I'm not sure the listeners know it. For those who hear, the whole issue of Marjorie mentioned a minute ago that the bulk of the industry is controlled by white guys and how there's not enough diversity. Our statute, which was a ballot question, which was in part drafted by a former marijuana commissioner once it was legalized, Cannabis Control Commission Commissioner Shailene Title, who's great, explicitly wrote in it the provisions about racial and economic equity. So it's not just a good idea, it's the law that was approved by people in Massachusetts. And by the way, the legislature, to their credit for once, updated the law to make sure that cities and towns, when granting licenses, have to consider racial equity and things like that too. So we're moving in the right direction, even though slowly. We really wish you both good luck, and we really appreciate your calling. People should patronize your business. Thanks.
Well, it's only a block or so from here.
331 Newberry.
You're right over after the show, Jim. 877.
But that's really important. I'm sorry for people to know. This is not just, a nice thing. The statute, the law in the state requires that there be consideration of and benefit to people who suffered most under marijuana laws. And for the most part, those are people of color.
Let's go to Kathleen in...
Somewhere. Hi, Kathleen.
California.
Oh, California.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Yeah, that's right. It's my favorite way to start the day every morning.
Oh, thank you.
My mental health program. Anyway, I call because I think the right to make personal use out of anything that occurs in nature is God-given, not state-given, and the government doesn't have any business telling me what I can grow in my garden and what I can put in my teapot or anything like that. It's a natural substance. They have no right to do it.
Well, you're a
I
good
love
one,
it.
Kathleen. That's a great way to start our
You're
day,
a good
too,
Californian,
so thank you.
too, Kathleen. I like that attitude.
great.
Thank you very much for listening to us out there on the West Coast.
877-301-8970. What we're talking about is the announcement the president made yesterday to pardon those who have federal convictions for possession, just possession. It's 6,500 people. It may not sound like a lot because it's not a lot. What he didn't have the power to do was pardon people's state convictions, and the vast majority, by a zillionfold, are state convictions. So he was urging governors, like whoever our next one is, to do a similar thing. And one of the two, haven't heard from Jeff Deal today. I don't know if you have, Jamie. But as of showtime, Maura Healey, the Democratic candidate, has said she would emulate what the president did on the state level should she be elected on November 8th.
We do know from the Boston Globe story that he issued a statement slamming Biden for eliminating, quote, consequences for wrongful actions, close quote, but also said he would respect the decision by Massachusetts voters to legalize the drug. And Heather from Dartmouth sent a clip about the racist history of marijuana laws coming out of the black community, jazz world, and all that kind of stuff. And that's a bad history as well. Peter says, I agree with pardon, but don't do it 4 weeks before the election, just giving GOP ammunition to portray Dems as soft on crime. And I mean, that's the point, although if 70% of people think we should be legalizing marijuana, I'm not sure that it's going to hurt the Democrats, I don't think.
Can I add one more statistic? This is from the Civil Liberties Union. Guess how many people, you haven't looked at page 2 of this handout yet, so just guess. How many people do you think were arrested for having marijuana from 2001 to 2000? Oh, now you're looking.
Okay.
2010 nationally.
Okay, I have no idea.
You just look. 7 million people. One every 30 seconds. Now, the problem is, again, the vast majority of those arrests are on the state level. So if you're in New Hampshire, Rhode Island, California, if you're listening, Texas, like Lee, individual governors, individual legislatures have got, well, actually not, governors have power. Individual governors have to do what you want them to do if they're going to emulate the President of the United States.
And to repeat that if you have old marijuana charges on your record, you can have trouble getting a job, getting an apartment, winning custody if there's a dispute between you and your former spouse, or getting into college. I mean...
Or remembering where you went to college in some people's cases. You know what I mean? That's not a legal problem, but it's
yeah, that's right. I am confused.
Problem.
I know I was somewhere. I'm not exactly sure where I was.
Where do you want to go?
Scott from South Boston. Thank you for calling.
Hey, Scott.
Hey, Jim Marjorie. Thank you for having me. I just wanted to say that, like, I feel like the statement by Biden is great. It should send a smoke signal to Congress that this is a popular piece of legislation. But relying on the governors, I mean, we've got half the state that's got Yahoo's like Abbott at the top, and it hurts their political bottom line. So we are seeing some incremental like smoke signals, no pun intended. But it really is going to take the federal legislation to make a difference here. And you know, like my brother had a possession charge, and he's a straight arrow. He's a oral surgeon, but to get through medical school and to get into dental school and do all of that, he had to fight really hard in court to kind of get that even rubbed from his record. We were lucky to have that. So it's a good move in the right direction, but it's really going to take that federal legislation to make a real difference.
Scott, you're totally right. We got to let you go only because the connection's bad. Thank you for making the call, though.
The Globe also points out, and this is relevant to what Scott was talking about, that exceedingly few people have cleared their marijuana-related state criminal records under the 2018 law because of all these restrictions on eligibility criteria and this really cumbersome process that let judges really decide whether or not to deny. It shouldn't be something you have to apply for.
It should be automatic.
It should be automatic. It's not that way in Massachusetts. Maura Healey has not said whether she'd do that if she's elected governor. But there's something really horrible about having to apply and go through this whole, this elaborate, and if you don't cross a T right or dot an I right, you won't be able to get your application through.
And by the way, for people who say, well, why shouldn't they have to apply? Beyond the fact, why should it be cumbersome if there's a blanket pardon? Look at the most recent booster shot, and we saw a poll last week, somewhere like 58%, I don't have the number precisely. A majority of people didn't even know there was a new booster that was targeted at the variants. The reality is, It's too hard. And if it's the right thing to do, it should be done automatically.
You know what
You're
else,
totally
too? This email I just pointed out, don't forget, doctors can prescribe opioids willy-nilly with the consequences we know, but getting high in weed is no big deal for the GOP. And it is a great thing in Massachusetts. I mean, 15 years ago, if you go to the dentist or you go get some operation, you would get this container full of opioids or Vicodin or whatever. And now Baker changed that, so you get far fewer, because that's what happened to people, sometimes even teenagers. They break their wrist playing sports, and they get this huge container of opioids before they knew it, they were hooked.
You know, before we leave this, you mentioned him yesterday, I don't know why. Who nominated Ginsburg? Not Ruth Bader. There was another nominee to the Supreme Court, Justice Ginsburg, one that never became Justice Ginsburg, nominee Ginsburg, who, correct me if I'm wrong, was rejected because it came out that he had smoked marijuana?
Pot. Yeah. I forget, was that Clinton? I don't remember.
Well, Clinton would make sense, wouldn't it? You know what
well,
I mean?
he never inhaled. Don't you remember?
Wait, is Clinton the one who said he never inhaled?
I think so.
Is that a Clinton-esque thing to say, or what?
Yeah, I smoked pot, but I never inhaled.
He didn't have sex with that woman either.
No, he did.
Yeah,
he didn't.
Ms. Lewinsky.
Okay, we are moving on. Coming up next, for decades, the voice of Darth Vader has come from the legendary James Earl Jones. Well, now he's passing the torch to an AI facsimile of himself. I think he's 91, James Earl Jones, isn't he? But what a time to be alive. We'll talk to with Andy Ihnatko, fresh out a trip to this week's Made by Google conference in New York. He's our tech guy. He's next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library.
From the GBH Newsroom.
I'm Callie Crossley, host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley. Much as people complain about what's going on in their news reporting in general, they have a high degree of trust and interest in local journalism. And a large part of that has to do with it's where they live. Anytime that you can do important stories about where people live, that's it. That's the whole ballgame.
Part of your community. GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you and Direct Tire and Auto Service, committed to transparency in the auto repair business. Their team will text videos on the vehicle inspection process to help you understand the work they are considering. DirectTire.com. And the Peabody Essex Museum, presenting the darker side of Salem with eerie events. You can experience haunted histories, film screenings, and authentic witch trial objects in a new curator-led audio tour. PEM.org/Halloween.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browning and Marjorie Egan. We're live as the Boston Public Library. We're back on Tuesday. Mayor Wu is here for an hour for Ask the Mayor on Tuesday. What time is she here, Jamie? Do you know? 12:30 to 1:30. Mayor Wu will be with us at the library. Take your questions. Two quick updates before we introduce the next guest. We were both wrong. Ginsburg was nominated by Ronald Reagan.
Oh, Ronald Reagan. I love it.
1987, yep. And Reagan withdrew his nomination once it became clear that Ginsburg admitted that he had smoked marijuana several times. It embarrassed Reagan, as the New York Times, who had called his confirmation vitally important to the fight against crime, I guess.
Well, you know, Nancy was the big say no to drugs person.
I know, of course.
Yeah,
just say no to drugs.
Just say no to drugs.
And did you read this text? It isn't signed. I can't listen anymore to the dangerous lies you're propagating in the air about this drug. Whoever sent that text, if you want to send us another text, and I'm serious, and list what the dangerous lies are that we told, assuming you're right, which I don't, we'll read your text on the air. So please take some time and tell us what we misrepresented. But in the interim, we're joined now by Andy Ihnatko. Andy is a tech writer and blogger. You can follow him at IHNATKO. That's Andy Ihnatko. Hi, Andy.
Hello.
Hello.
So, Andy, I believe you may be fresh off the Amtrak train from the big Made by Google event in New York City.
It was the 2:40 a.m. train, so fresh is probably not the word. But yes, I'm excited. So
yeah. So tell us about it.
This is the annual press event that Google does to kind of do what Apple did last month, which is, hey, here's the new phone, hey, here's the new watch, aren't we great? Google, it's very low key. It's like 100 people instead of like a big auditorium of people. There's snacks.
So you made the cut for the 100 people.
I know.
I'm very impressed. There you go.
So I didn't want to come out and say it, but yes, I do.
One of the top 100 people in the tech world.
Or at least the ones there are a lot of reasons why people get invited or don't don't get invited. You try not to take it personally because oftentimes I don't get invited.
We do, but go ahead.
But it's a different one because the iPhone is the most popular phone in the entire country, and the Apple Watch basically defines the standard of wearable smartwatches. There almost is no competition for it. And so when Google shows off their Pixel phone, that's their Google branded version of the Android's phone. They make the Android operating system that's on your Samsung phone and others, but they decided that, hey, we want to make our own branded phone so we can have our own point of view about what a phone should look like. They're not going from a position of, oh yes, everybody in the audience, hold up your Pixel phone. Ooh, that's even fewer people than I thought would be.
Oh no!
And the watch this is the first year they've done their own branded smartwatch. I'm wearing it right now. As a matter of fact, it's going to be released next week. And
wow.
They've had just nothing but trouble trying to get into the smartwatch space. So this is the same thing as they did with the phones. They said, we are sick and tired of trying to trust companies like Qualcomm to give us a chip that will power a really good smartwatch. Apple does all their own chips. We're tired of basically subcontracting this out. We will design this. They actually bought a couple of companies to help them do that.
You know, Andy, as you know, I have an Android. I've never had an iPhone, and my understanding, I'm sure, pretty clear. If you have an Apple Watch, you got to have an iPhone to make it happen. Is anybody manufacturing a smartwatch where you can use it with iPhones, Androids, everything that's out there, or no?
Samsung has their Samsung Watch. It's very, very nice, and they.
You don't sound like it's very, very nice.
Well, it's just that it's very much a gadget watch. Like you look at an Apple Watch, and I'm sorry for people who are just listening, but people who are on YouTube, what I've got on my wrist is a very kind of sharp-looking round face. It's kind of like a bubble of glass.
Yeah.
It has interchangeable bands, so I can have fancy leather bands where I'm out at the opera, then switch it back to this rubber one when I'm out on my daily three-mile run. And it's a desirable piece of jewelry to wear, whereas the Samsung Watch is all function, and it's not really all that great.
Can this one tell you if you're having a stroke or something like that, or what?
It does most of the stuff that the Apple Watch will do, because really we're all now all smartwatch makers are kind of limited to the sensors that are physically possible right now, and now they're so commoditized that every smartwatch, even some fitness trackers on my right wrist is my Fitbit that I was wearing all today. This is what I've got. The Pixel Watch is a loaner, so I'm just wearing it like today just to figure it out. But even like these much less expensive fitness trackers, they can do heart rate, they can do EKGs, they can do temperature fluctuations.
That's great, actually.
Yeah.
What's the watch go for?
This is kind of spendy. It's $350 because it's stainless steels. There's no cheapening out on the materials, and I guess that Google felt like it was okay that if Apple is charging $350 and Samsung is charging $300, that was an okay space to be. I was a little bit disappointed because remember they have to win hearts and minds with this device. They and Apple actually introduced smartwatches at the exact same time. Only because Google was limited to just sort of begging these other companies to say, look, please make us a watch that looks good. Qualcomm, again, the company that makes the chip that powers it, whereas Apple was designing a tailor-made CPU that was designed just to make the Apple Watch awesome, Qualcomm said, yeah, we've got this 10-year-old chip that I suppose would work in a watch. Like, okay, but you don't want to build a new one? Nah, we'll give you, so it'll suck, it doesn't have the power to do really cool things, whereas it sucks up so much power that like it can't last more than like half a day.
Oh.
Quickly, when was the first Apple Watch released? When was it released? What year?
I want to say 2012.
That's
I was at the event.
Just 10 years ago. We're talking to Andy Ihnatko.
They're on Series 6 or 7, so I'm probably a little bit off.
So Marjorie and I teased that essentially that James Earl Jones can now live forever. We, of course, have no idea why we said that, but we know it had something to do with you. Why did we say it?
Well, because he decided that, look, I'm old, I've had a great career, I don't want to haul my butt into a recording booth, and every time the Disney Lucasfilm wants to has another Darth Vader character, I just don't want to do that anymore. And now that Disney has so much content they have to fill, there are like 1 million different TV series. The latest series they're doing actually has Darth Vader from Return of the Jedi, I think the Return of the Jedi era, like as a character. And James Earl Jones is like, I'm not going to haul my butt out every time.
He's 91, isn't he?
Right. You can't recast Darth Vader because it is a signature voice. So what they did was Disney basically licensed this piece of this wonderfully interesting app from a Ukrainian startup that can take any actor you hire an actor who will do Darth Vader's line, like he will be dramatic and everything, but they don't have to worry about sounding like James Earl Jones. But then the software, because James Earl Jones sold Disney some licensing rights, and they had so much audio to build from, they could build a digital model of his voice. So you basically, it's not as simple as drag the audio file into this app and it spits out the exact same performance, only done like James Earl Jones's performance of Darth Vader, but it's close to that.
So if Marjorie spoke the words with the emotion that the script called for, what she voiced could become James Earl Jones. That's unbelievable.
And I've seen demos of this. The intent, it's not like you have to try to sound like James Earl Jones. It's like, no, you can get the greatest actor you want. You get Meryl Streep, and she will say that, Luke, I am your father. and it will be, Luke, I am your father.
Pretty incredible.
That was very good. That was very good, Andy.
Maybe I'm auditioning too, now that I know that they don't need me.
We got a clip.
We do?
Yes, we do.
Let's play it.
Yeah, this is some sound demonstrating this new voice cloning engine called Respeecher. I guess that's what it's called?
Yes.
Respeecher? Okay, here it is.
In this video, I'll demonstrate a couple of new features of Respeecher's speech-to-speech voice cloning engine.
Obviously, I can speak with another person's voice. But notice that now the sound is 44.1 kilohertz.
Really high
also,
resolution.
We can support a wide range of emotions. For example, I can whisper a little bit. Or I can speak in a very unusual way.
What's also cool is that I can gradually change my voice into another person's voice.
Well, that was useful. I have no idea why we played that. In any case, what did that tell us?
I thought he was going to change his voice into James Earl Jones'
What
voice.
did that do for us?
It tells you that you're often now creators are not limited by availability of actors. That you can do things like Disney and Lucasfilm. They're such a great example of all this because they have so many ideas on what to do in the Star Wars universe. Some of these ideas involve let's do a story that takes place during the first Star Wars movie, like sort of not behind the scenes, but at the same time. But we've got this. It would be. I wish Peter Cushing were both alive and 48 years old again, because we have a great scene in mind for Grand Moff Tarkin, the role he played in 1977. But now what they did was they built a digital model. They got permission from his estate. They built a digital Peter Cushing, and they basically had an actor in a motion capture suit, a very simple suit with some markings on it, basically do like the physical voice, the physical acting for him, and then they were able to replace it with that. Princess Leia was the same thing. They basically created a model of what Carrie Fisher looked like in 1977.
Okay, so the notion of being able to continue hearing James Earl Jones's voice is appealing, even though it's somewhat troubling to me.
It could.
Especially he could be dead and do this, not just 91.
Right.
I mean, right, exactly.
That was a big buy, great buy for Disney. Yes.
So one of the great things you were often able to do when we talk about new technology with you is talk about the what happens down the line that might cause us some concern with an otherwise good idea. Is there such a thing down the line here?
There are a lot of bad things. Like I'll give you an actual example. Jet Li, the superstar martial arts actor, he was going to be one of the lead characters in The Matrix. But he told the story a few years ago about how he turned it down as soon as he read the contract they gave him, which involved 3 months on the set to be acting, but then a suspiciously long 6 or 7 months on a special effects studio in a motion capture suit, doing all of his signature moves and stuff like that. And the contract said that, oh, by the way, we will now own all of those moves, so that if like 4 years from now we're doing Kung Fu Panda, we can basically have the Kung Fu Panda do all of your signature moves and not pay you for it. And by the way, we own those moves too, so now you can't do that in a movie either.
But the flip side is that it seems to me that when you're, let's say, 60, and you think I can't act or do whatever I do or voice something forever, I can sell the rights, only agree and be there forever. But how about in the non-act? Is there a use for this that I'm just missing in the real world as opposed to in the acting kind of world?
There's a lot of stuff where, like, I want you to imagine in the not too distant future, this is actually a very practical thing where it's home movies or movies of the wedding. And there was a shot there was a group photo where people are talking and laughing together, and Nana was out. She wasn't there I just wish there was a way we could just basically have her. We can't be programming her doing stuff, but if she could just be in the back, just sort of like holding her drink, that would be great. And the ability to simply, well, look, We shot so much video during the wedding. We actually have her from multiple angles. This is current research technology. I can't remember the name of it because it's an acronym. But basically, if you have enough frames of video, you can build a really good 3D model. Not good enough to really trick people, but if you want to put Nana in the background, like watching the kids sing their song, you can put Nana in the background singing that song. That's not. It can happen today in a research lab. Maybe in 4 or 5 or 6 years, it could be an iMovie where you have a list of here are all the people who are appearing in this. Oh, I really wish that Nana dancing in this part were actually in this scene instead, and it will build a 3D model of her movements and basically adapt. And because it's a 3D model, it will have the same lighting as this other scene that she wasn't in. It will have like the same sort of effect. It's really exciting what can be done.
Okay, so Andy, we spent a lot of time on the show talking about the Supreme Court is essentially destroying life as we know it. And one of the things that they have taken up, which I didn't know about until we heard from you yesterday, I think most people listening have heard, even if they don't know what it means, Section 230, the Communications Decency Act. It's something oddly that for different reasons, both Joe Biden and Donald Trump had problems with, and both wanted to get rid. First of all, explain what it is factually, right, and explain what the Supreme Court is contemplating doing and whether or not it should cause us concern.
The impact of Section 230 is that it allows essentially the internet to exist, because if you think about it, you and me are posting photos that we took at places. We're like on Twitter, we're on some place basically stating our opinions of things. You can't have in 1996, lawmakers appreciated that you can't have a situation where for YouTube didn't exist back then, but where a future version of YouTube will get sued and is held legally responsible for the things that their users contribute to the platform. It's just not possible. And so they created Section 230, which is 2 major exemptions for digital publishers or digital content passer-alongers, digital services. Basically, number one, they are not publishers; they are simply distributors from a legal point of view. Just like if I run a newsstand and I sell you a newspaper, you can't sue me for libel because something that is in the newspaper. I didn't publish the paper; I only distributed it to you. Number two, they were very, very canny about how they did this too. They said the fact that a digital publisher or a digital service decides to take down certain content and let certain other content exist, that is not going to be taken as they're using editorial control and therefore they're making decisions about what appears on that platform. So these 2 things mean that, again, whenever you send an email, whenever you, again, post something on Twitter, even when you just share a photo, that thing can happen. They can make that service, because otherwise any company that did it would be liable for every single piece of information that's out there.
Well,
so
there are
really
some
important
concerns, which we'll voice in a minute, about dangerous things that allow the Facebooks of the world to hide behind for a moment to protect themselves. But what's the Supreme Court contemplating?
This one is really interesting, because the law gets interesting to me as a non-lawyer, as a tech person, when you get into we forgot, there's this little crack that we didn't see or anticipate. So this is a case called Gonzalez versus Google. A young woman, let's make sure her name is stated, Noemi Gonzalez. She was 23 years old, and she was killed in the Paris ISIS attacks in November 2015. 129 people were killed in those attacks. And so the family and her estate sued YouTube because they said, look, the people who took part in these attacks, they were radicalized by YouTube videos. And it wasn't that they went searching for, I want to become a terrible person who kills people. It was the algorithm decided, I bet this person might be interested in ISIS videos, so I'm going to show them ISIS videos. So the basis that they would not have seen this video if YouTube had not recommended it to them. They lost in lots of different circuit courts underneath. But the premise they're trying to say is that no, Section 230 does not apply because this algorithm was making a choice to give this person this video.
By the way, that sounds like a pretty powerful argument to me.
It is, although there is, unfortunately, the Ninth Circuit Court in an unrelated case actually decided that that's not what 230 does. They were saying they had to make a different ruling on something a lot less sad, where they're saying that, well, look, we can't say that just because an algorithm places something somewhere more attentively and makes it easier to find than others, at some point, if you put something on a web page, something is going to be is going to be higher up than something else. We can't simply make sure have YouTube have to defend every time that some video appears high on some list. Every time you do a Google search, why do some things appear higher than lower? They can't simply say that, oh no, you're promoting that because it's easier to find. The Ninth Circuit Court basically said that would be a complete and total mess. It would be total chaos. And so for that reason, we're going to say that Section 230 also protects YouTube algorithms too.
So why would you be concerned, which I think you are, if the Supreme Court reversed that and said, this is an affirmative act, this algorithm, that sent them or suggested that they go see some ISIS videos? What is a free speech type?
Facebook does that too. And we've talked about how if you voice some approval of Donald Trump in any kind of way, within 7 days you will get this most radical, crazy, increasingly nutty stuff. Yeah. The same thing with Biden, that if you're a Democrat, it'll be the same thing. And I don't know that that seems to be rather aggressively dousing stuff on people as opposed
Right, so
to...
why is it not okay to say that they went too far in that case or in the case of this woman who was killed?
Because we all have the right to say whatever we want. However, almost none of them have the power to say it, because I have a web server. It's on a network. I have a computer that's set up with all the software so I can basically host my own content. I'm good. But if your outlet was, gee, I really want to say how bad things are going at this company and what all the labor abuses are, you can start getting an account on Medium.com and put all the stuff you write there. And so what if Medium.com is now, well, actually, Section 230A has been wiped out, which is not going to happen. But let's say it's weakened enough that now there's doubt about how much coverage they're going to get. They're going to say, you know what, we're not going to give you free space. We're going to charge you $180 a month because we need to have legal insurance against you. It's going to make it harder for all of these companies to allow people to use their platforms for free expression. That's a guarantee if this happens.
Go ahead.
Though this isn't totally related because it's not a tech thing, but we're awaiting the verdict in this Alex Jones case to see how much money he's going to owe for the lies he spewed. So maybe that's a hopeful, if he's bankrupted, he claims he's bankrupted, but no one believes him, millions and millions and millions paid to these families in Sandy Hook about whom he lied, and parents were chased down the street and they were urinating on these children's graves. Did you read these stories? I mean, just horrible. That maybe that's a chilling, I hope, I think
we're all dealing with the question of, even I agree that I think that the unrestrained, putting no restrictions on what tech companies can do served an important and valuable purpose. I do not regret that for the past 20 years at all. But now that they are trillion-dollar companies, it might be okay to simply suddenly say that, okay, you know what, Google, you have the ability to do a better job than what you're doing. Explain to us in a court of law why we shouldn't have a law or an injunction demanding that you do it instead of just asking you to promise us again.
Can I interrupt this for a second? Because there's a related thing that wasn't even on our list today. I want your thoughts. We only have a minute and a half. Elon Musk apparently is going to buy Twitter. Speaking of dangerous, the implication from what Musk said in the early phase of this, before it died and then was rekindled, is Trump will be back on Twitter. What's your projection based upon what you know about Trump and his worldview about Trump and Twitter?
Elon Musk, anything can happen, because I think that he's demonstrated he's really out of touch about how the world works. They had the Tesla, what they call the AI Day, the annual day in which they show off, here's our artificial intelligence, and they showed off a robot that they hinted at last year called Optimus. And so we want to build a robot, a humanoid robot that will cost no more than $20,000, and they'll be everywhere. I'll wrap this up really quickly, I'm sorry. And he was saying, and the great thing is it will eliminate poverty because people will not have to work because the robot's in here. And you're like, this is why we don't like people who have $180 million, Elon, because they think that
$250 billion. Who's counting?
But that's, it soon adds up.
But give me the little short.
So basically, I think that he will make changes to the platform that are absolutely out of touch with what makes a platform like that work. Content moderation, kicking people like Trump out is incredibly important. I think he will just use it as a toy and something he wants to play with. As a result, he will destroy, for all the bad stuff that we talk about Twitter for, it is an amazing platform for simply getting information out there. And it's up to us to make sure we're not hoodwinked by stuff. But the ability to say, oh my God, did anybody hear that explosion? The number of times that I've been in a situation where, I'm like, what are the local tweets? Like, oh, that's something I should pay attention to because something bad is happening. Anyway.
We got to go.
Andy Ihnatko,
Andy, good to see you.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Andy's a tech
Thanks,
writer
guys.
and blogger. You can follow him at Ihnatko, which is spelled I-H-N as in Nancy, A-T-K-O. Up next, GBH's Callie Crossley. We'll talk to her about these federal pardons for marijuana possession, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's first week on the job, and the latest food trend taking over TikTok food. Move aside crudités. Welcome butter charcuterie boards. You are listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH from the Boston Public Library. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
It's not over yet. More smart conversation about community issues is up ahead with Jim Brady and Marjorie Eakin on Boston Public Radio. Right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you and the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds for the citizens and businesses of the Commonwealth. You can see if you have unclaimed money at findmassmoney.com. Campaign season is heating up, and so are dynamic discussions on what's happening around Boston City Hall, Beacon Hill, and beyond. Join host Adam Riley for Talking Politics tonight at 7 on GBH2.
Trusted. Local. News. This is 89.7 WGBH. WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. Boston's local NPR.
Ahead on Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library, we'll get Callie Crossley's take on Biden's move to pardon federal marijuana convictions and a campaign to get the Cherokee Nation a seat in Congress as promised in 1835. Then, 'tis the season for apple cider donuts. Alex Schwartz has amassed a following of a couple million with his Instagram reviews of my personal favorite sweet thing. He'll walk us through the subtleties of different local cider donut purveyors as Marjorie and I sample all of them.
There are nearly 300 GOP nominees for public office this election cycle, still denying results of the 2020 election. Media maven Sue O'Connell joins us to discuss this, Trump's new defamation suit against CNN, and Velma from Scooby-Doo coming out as a lesbian. Then it's Live Music Friday. We'll hear from some folks from Honkfest to talk about their music. Then the issue all America is hotly debating. Should one cut one's sandwiches horizontally or diagonally? And all that ahead, Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The U.S. economy added 263,000 jobs in the month of September, according to new data from the Labor Department, and the unemployment rate dropped to 3.5%. NPR's David Gura reports.
The increase in jobs is pretty much in line with what Wall Street forecast, although economists expected the unemployment rate to be slightly higher. The biggest gains were in leisure and hospitality and in healthcare. Employment in healthcare is back to where it was before the pandemic. What the Federal Reserve is most interested in is wage growth. And in September, average hourly earnings were up by 0.3% from the month before, and they were up 5% from a year ago. As the Fed looks for signs interest rate hikes are having an effect, that they're slowing down the economy, these data are a good sign. That's happening. David Gura, NPR News, New York.
The Nobel Prize Committee has awarded the 2022 Peace Prize to recipients in Ukraine, Russia, and Belarus. From Kyiv, NPR's Yulian Haida reports about the Center for Civil Liberties, which was the winner from Ukraine.
The Center for Civil Liberties was founded in 2007, a time when Ukraine's human rights activists began to reach out across borders. They learned how to better organize and use international courts to defend vulnerable populations. That came in handy when, in 2013, the Ukrainian government arrested activists and journalists during a popular uprising. Same for when Russia invaded the following year. Attorney Yuri Bilaus has worked with the center, building war crimes cases against Russian troops. Bilaus says the center's work creates a peaceful world by holding war criminals and civil rights abusers accountable. Yulian Haida, NPR News, Kyiv.
In southwestern Florida, residents continue their work today to salvage what they can from the damage Hurricane Ian caused more than a week ago. On Pine Island, Alan Bickford says the sadness comes in waves.
It's like a death of a loved one.
Just the pain just comes and goes. There's times when you get little glimmers or slivers of hope, and then everything falls apart.
Teams of disaster relief workers have gone to Pine Island and other heavily hit areas with emergency supplies. They include groceries and medical items. They're planning to remain in the hurricane-battered regions in Florida for several more weeks. Meanwhile, work continues in the U.S. territory of Puerto Rico, which was hit weeks ago by Hurricane Fiona. Many residents are still reporting power outages, and in some cases, they still have not received safe drinking water. At last check on Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 482 points at 29,443. You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston. I'm Henry Santoro. Members of Maine's congressional delegation are targeting a California aquarium that has recently red-listed lobster. Kevin Miller with the New England News Collaborative explains.
Representative Jared Golden and Senator Angus King say they plan to introduce bills that will cut off all federal funding to the Monterey Bay Aquarium. Representative Shelley Pingree and Senator Susan Collins plan to co-sponsor the proposals, which come 1 month after the aquarium's Seafood Watch program urged consumers to avoid lobster because of the risks that fishing gear poses to endangered North Atlantic right whales. Maine's political leadership has locked arms with the state's economically powerful lobster industry to denounce the Seafood Watch red listing as being without any scientific basis. They point out that no right whale injuries have been linked to Maine lobster gear in decades, and there has never been a death tied to the industry. But in a statement, the Monterey Bay Aquarium says the Seafood Watch ratings, quote, reflect a management failure and that the lobster industry is out of compliance with the Endangered Species Act. Scientists estimate there are fewer than 350 North Atlantic right whales left in existence.
In sports, playoff baseball underway with 4 games on tap today. The first game starts in just about 25 minutes. Exhibition basketball, Celtics play the Hornets tonight. In the forecast, sunny and upper 70s today, clear low 50s overnight. This is great sleeping weather. Sunny and 60 tomorrow, sunny mid-60s on Sunday. We're looking at 71 degrees in Boston right now under a beautiful sunny sky. If you can get out and enjoy some of the day, do so right now.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include DuckDuckGo, a privacy company committed to making privacy online simple. Used by tens of millions, they offer private search and tracker blocking with one download. DuckDuckGo, privacy simplified.
And make your way to the BPL for Honkfest in just about an hour. This is GBH News.
Friday, I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome back to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library as we do every Tuesday and every Friday. And we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Excellent. Well done. And by the way, the mayor is with us 12:30, 1:30 on Tuesday, our next day at the library for Ask the Mayor. Number 2 in the 1 o'clock hour, as Henry just said, Rim Bam Boom, part of the Honkfest from Santiago, Chile, is going to play. And I'm not exactly a fun kind of guy, as Marjorie knows. This is fun. They're great. We heard them before at 11 o'clock. They are spectacular.
They're honking, Jim, is what they are.
And spirit-lifting kind of thing. We're joined now by Callie Crossley. Maybe not, because her microphone's not working, but just yell loudly, Callie. She's the host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, which you can catch Sunday nights right here at 89.7 at 6 o'clock. She's also the host of Basic Black, which airs Fridays at 7:30. You can also hear our Callie commentaries on Mondays for GBH's Morning Edition. She is back. Nice to see you, Callie Crossley.
Hello, you too.
Hello.
So a great debut for Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. Yeah, she got right in there talking about this significant case out of Alabama, which is really, I think, could possibly really screw African Americans, about the historical significance of the 14th and 15th Amendment. Let's start with some sound. And she's talking about, as I just said, the history of the 14th Amendment and the case for voter rights.
There was a concern that the Civil Rights Act wouldn't have a constitutional foundation. That's when the 14th Amendment came into play. It was drafted to give a constitutional foundation for a piece of legislation that was designed to make people who had less opportunity and less rights equal to white citizens.
Day 2.
Yeah. So I would think it would be harder to be a racist sitting next to an African-American woman. But maybe I'm wrong.
No, I think you're wrong about that.
I'm wrong about that. Okay, that dash that.
Can you describe the case before we get into what she said, what this thing is about there, Kelly Crossley?
Well, this is Alabama having a dispute about the congressional districts map. And the best way I can put it is they reshaped it so where there should have been allowed for representation by someone running for office who was African American, the way that they redid it, it's not possible because they've spread out the voters over several districts, or they've made it almost impossible in the other one where they're not spread out.
Right, to dilute the black vote, so they'll end up maybe with one congressional seat rather than two, which is what their population would merit.
Exactly. So that's the case. And Alabama has said over and over again, this is race neutral. This just happened because we did the districting, blah, blah, blah. And so when she went to quote from the Constitution, her last line in saying this is that that's not a race neutral or race blind idea in referring to what is in the Constitution. So this is a direct response to people who are so-called originalists who say, well, we can't think about what's happening right now in this real world because it has to come from the Constitution. So she gave them back what they said. Here it is. It's in the Constitution. So you tell me how this works. If here is this in the Constitution.
You know what's interesting about this? I'm doing a little math because that's one of the things I'm good at. If she says one more sentence next week, she will have spoken more than Clarence Thomas in 30 years on the Supreme Court. I mean, it really is, the notion just, it's not just Clarence Thomas who has said virtually nothing in 32 years.
Well, he said more lately.
But still almost nothing.
Yeah.
You're supposed to sort of obey your elders kind of thing. When you're on the Supreme Court, you sit back, you wait your turn kind of thing. Day one, she's talking. This is day two, where everybody said she essentially was the centerpiece of the whole questioning of the litigants. It's so great.
So get back to my naive, apparently ridiculous question. You don't think that her presence is going to make a difference?
Did it make any difference with Thurgood Marshall? He was the first sitting there, and he had just come off the road, having been instrumental in changing the fundamental law that made it possible for me to be sitting here. I mean,
and you don't think
he was sitting on the court with all those people.
And you don't think it mattered?
No.
You don't think 50 years of precedent? Why don't you say that? 50 years of precedent. That's going to affect those six justices.
Because I think that there are a lot of white people who haven't really thought about racism and what you go through if you're a black person. I mean, I remember you told me about 30 years ago about the story about you coming on and going through a McDonald's drive-thru, about being accosted by the cops. And I was rather stunned because I think of you as mismatching brooch and pocketbook and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't think I'm unusual in that. So, but I guess it was.
No, I mean, listen, there's a couple things happening here. I mean, as I agree with you, and Jim doesn't, as you know, because we've had these conversations, I agree that her presence and the fact that she's making the cogent, intelligent, correct arguments, based on the law, which everybody says got to be based on the law. Don't come here giving us any kind of political motivated statement. This is what she is doing. I do think people will listen to that. They're not dumb.
Yeah.
Well, I would say one of them may be, but there are smart people who engage in generally constructive kinds of conversations behind the walls that we don't even see. That's part of the deal.
Yeah.
But the question you're asking is that enough? Is it impactful enough to change their minds? I say, you and I have said we have hope that maybe there's something that has happened. I've been in a situation where I changed some people's minds, but that wasn't on the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And I wasn't all these guys who have been entrenched in their position for a long, long, long time. And the court is very much political now in the ways that perhaps we didn't understand it to be in the past.
Well, can I say, I think you maybe said this, so maybe I'm repeating it, but let me say, well, I'm totally with you. It's not going to change the minds of any of these people. They've waited a lifetime to screw a multitude of constituencies, and now they have the power to do it, most recently in the Dobbs case around women. Well, I think what you and Marjorie maybe are also both saying, having a voice like this that is this strong, that is going to be this prominent, is going to educate a lot of members of the public who maybe don't get it.
For sure.
And so ultimately what's going to, I hate to be positive because I don't feel positively about it at all, what ultimately is going to change the whole deal is when the public says we're mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore, and they need to be, a lot of them need to be educated, well-intended people who just don't get it, and hopefully she can do that. Having said that, I said to one or both of you last week, maybe it was you, I don't know, Nancy Gertner, I don't know who it was, how can you take a job when you know that it's decently likely for the next 30 years, nothing you believe in will get a majority vote? I'm serious.
You said that to me, and I said this is not unusual for her in her life.
Well, you did say that. That's right. Yeah,
this is not unusual for her in the trajectory of her career. But here's what I would also say that came across to me as she spoke up, with passion and the brilliance that she is that she does not have any time to waste. That's what she made clear. I fought my way onto this. The people that backed me fought for me to be on here. I am not sitting here wasting time. And I am reminded always when I hear about the kinds of folks that are pushing as hard as they are pushing to do what they are supposed to do, what their mission and their purpose is. A line from Hamilton: why does he write like he's running out of time? Why does she speak like she's running out of time? That is brilliant, Lin-Manuel Miranda. It says it all. She doesn't have time to waste.
Nicely put. Well, that's upbeat. And speaking of positive, Monday, other than with Tony Soprano, is Indigenous Peoples Day, I believe.
That is correct.
They've been waiting for a long time.
And apparently, it's one of the great episodes of The Sopranos ever, by the way. I don't know if you remember that with the demonstrations when the protesters were on the steps.
Because they were all Italian.
Right, exactly. It was great.
They're worried about Christopher Columbus.
So a leader in Cherokee Nation believes that based upon a treaty that I think was 187 years old, that Cherokee Nation is entitled to a, well, unfortunately non-voting, but a seat in Congress.
Right.
And I have to say, I read up a little bit on this morning. Other than emotionally being with her, I think she's got a case, don't you?
Yeah. And then also, in addition to potentially having a case, as this piece makes clear, there's now some political power in place that hadn't been there before in terms of folks who are Native American in high political positions who can, hear and be open to having this discussion. They're trying to push this to a vote or a hearing before the end of the year in case if there's any flip of the House, then you have to start all over again having this conversation, they believe. So it'll be interesting to see what comes up in the conversation.
And she's not arguing fairness or equity. She's saying this treaty mandates that we be entitled to representation. I want the treaty enforced. That's her argument.
That is true. And here's an answer a lot of people can give her, which is horrible but true. Well, we've not managed to support any other treaty, so why should we do it? I mean, am I wrong?
Good defense. That's a good argument.
I mean, it's a horrible response, but that's
what Clarence Thomas said to that argument?
Nothing.
Thank you. You stepped on my line. I was just going to sit here and not say anything.
You're here all week.
Thank you very much. Actually, I'm not, but thank you very much. Try the veal. Okay. 877. We're not putting out the phone number, are we?
No, because Callie Crossley is here. We're not
she is here.
We're not
That's
taking
correct.
any calls
What are we doing?
while she is here. Well, this horrible, horrible tragedy in Florida with Hurricane Ian. The death count is rising. These horrible, horrible stories. There is nothing good about this except for one teeny tiny possibility that maybe it might make Ron DeSantis' path to victory a little bit less clear cut. And Val Demings, who I've been a big fan of ever since people talked about her as a possible vice presidential candidate, former police chief in Orlando, a really terrific politician. Maybe she'll get closer to Rubio. Maybe she'll even beat Rubio.
Well, this is very interesting because the bottom line is that in the major counties where DeSantis and those of his ideological persuasion have won and won big, those were very hard hit. And so there's significant damage right there. But all of the people who are representing those counties voted against relief. All of them voted against relief. All of them. Let's say it again.
I didn't
voted
know that.
against relief.
I did not know that.
Everyone.
I did not know that either.
It was every one of them.
I didn't know all of them voted against. Let me say it again.
Please.
They all voted against relief.
Every one of them.
Right. Now, I would just like to
for
add,
money for people to save themselves or whatever they can
or
save.
get the support, the FEMA, the whatever that needs to happen.
Every one of them.
And we're talking about people who have been laid flat. It's bad enough when you've suffered some damage, but anybody who's seen those counties, these are the hardest hit counties. So this is bad news. Now, what they're talking about doing, already they're trying to have a conversation about how can people vote, period, because polling places, not there or whatever, so they may try to do like 12 sort of super voting places so people can find their way to those voting areas and be able to cast their ballot, because where they might have been able to might not be standing, probably isn't anymore. But I don't know, if I'm running against some of these people, it's something I would bring up quite a bit.
By the way, the bad news, Marjorie, from your perspective, I checked this morning because I know you're a big fan of Demings. The lead that Rubio has over her is expanding, actually, still in single digits. And the lead that Governor DeSantis, most people think he's running for president, and that's all it's on the table. He's running for governor in 3 weeks,
that's right.
re-election, and he's the guy running against him is a former Republican governor, Charlie Crist. He's losing by high single digits to DeSantis. So it appears that if nothing dramatic changes, both Rubio in the Senate and DeSantis in the governor's mansion or whatever he sits in will be reelected.
As is always said, what motivates people to go to the polls? I mean, people are usually driven by, something that has deep, deep meaning to them, because we have so many people who have the opportunity who are not driven to do that. So I'm wondering, if I were in that position where I've lost everything, where I'm struggling now, there's some people already saying we've not gotten, I don't care what they're saying, we've not gotten the help, not seen anything. Do I make my way, I probably would because I'm a super voter, make my way to the polls to say, really? You voted making sure against my being able to recover from this? And, oh, by the way, you had time to spend thousands of dollars to send people on a plane to Martha's Vineyard? I don't know.
Almost $1 million of the $12 million appropriated by the legislature in Florida to allow DeSantis to do this kind of thing. I think it was like $990,000 for the 2 planes. You wouldn't know when, this is not our topic, but if anybody knows, you can text this. Well, we have asked legal experts, anybody we can talk to, government people, how is it legal? Forget the big legal picture about this woman Perla deceiving people to get on the planes. That may be a crime for both her and DeSantis. How is it legal for him to spend Florida taxpayer money to transport immigrants who are in Texas? Do you know the answer?
I can just give you a little bit of an answer, having just, taped the show for Basic Black this week, and this is the focus, is that the person that he put on the ground in Texas, he asked those folks as they were interacting with migrants, are you trying to go to Florida? So he didn't just take any old body. He picked people who said...
That's sort of brilliant, actually.
So, are you trying to go to Florida? Well, let me make sure you don't go.
I got it.
So,
okay. We're talking to Callie Crossley. Callie, earlier we talked with listeners about Biden and President Biden announcing yesterday pardons for several thousand people who have federal convictions for marijuana possession alone. And we didn't touch, I have to say, I didn't do enough research on this, and Jamie, maybe you can check. I don't know if Biden himself mentioned this issue, which he should have if he did not. The racial disparity in terms of, he did mention it yesterday?
Yes.
So the number we have here from the Civil Liberties Union, blacks have been nearly 4 times more likely than whites to be arrested for marijuana possession. And if people think this is just a red state kind of thing, the Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts, we've discussed this with Carol Rose many a time, in Massachusetts, it's 3-1.
Yeah.
So it's still way out of whack. So this is important on that level as well.
And to be clear, because I think this has to be said over and over again, because if I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, what? Possession is different from criminal marijuana trafficking. So they're talking about people who have possession, not who were engaged in criminal trafficking.
Right.
Okay, just so we're clear about that, because I think I can see some people reacting saying, well, what's he doing pardoning people who were doing criminal activity? But, the whole marijuana thing has been, caught up in the whole Criminality Act anyway. So he's trying to move that away because so many states, 20 of them, have said marijuana is legal.
Right.
So you're already operating that. And I thought of one other thing. As you may know, for those cannabis shops located in various states, you can't bank You can't. You have to figure
because
out
of the
something-
federal
because of the
prohibition,
federal.
Schedule 1. Yeah.
So if he's able to remove that,
well, he needs Congress for
yes,
that.
exactly. But
I mean, how ridiculous is that?
Well, I'm just
people
saying.
have to stash, millions of dollars in cash. Some of them are actually at the places where they're selling the marijuana. They have to have armed guards on there 24 hours a day and stuff like that.
I thought the thing you were going to clarify, which I should have clarified, is when you hear blacks 4 times as likely to be arrested than whites for marijuana possession, 3 times in Massachusetts. The thing I should have added to that, people might say, well, maybe they're violating the law more when law was illegal. They're not. The underlying research, which I should have made clear about, is for the same behavior, for the same number of actions that were technically illegal. Blacks are arrested 4 times nationally at a higher rate than whites.
Well, that was
are.
a line we think from Mayor Wu, who went to Harvard. They're not over there arresting people in the halls of Harvard. They're arresting people on the street in Mattapan and Roxbury.
One of the problems occasionally with talking to people like you, Callie Crossley, is when you really want to get to a topic like TikTok butterboards, you have to go through all the serious things first, or you really seem low rent. But I am eating at a restaurant in Natick. I never heard of a TikTok butterboard.
Oh, okay.
2 weeks ago, I'm actually going to see my friend Tom Rush perform at this great venue in Natick called TCAN, Natick Center for the Arts. And we're having dinner with him at this restaurant, I think called Buttercup. I don't know what we ordered. Some bread thing?
Buttercup and butterboard. There you go.
And what comes out but a damn butterboard?
Wow.
That was one of the best things. I look at the smile on her face and mine. Here's a little sound before you speak to it from TikTok user Justine Snacks. What a great name.
Yes.
Explaining, I wish my name was that, explaining a new type of charcuterie board that she's been into lately, namely butterboards.
Have you heard of a butterboard? I want to make them the next charcuterie board. Not to usurp charcuterie, but maybe a little bit. But mostly because I just love the concept. It's by Josh McFadden, and it's all about if you're serving a group of people, spread a bunch of softened butter on a plate, add tons of flaky salt, tons of lemon zest, any herbs or toppings you want. I'm adding edible flowers and a honey coriander situation, but I'll link more ideas below. And serve with warm bread, and it just feels really communal. I love it.
Have you had it?
No, I would like to have it.
Explain it, because I don't really
here's
understand
the deal.
what this is.
You have a board, like a charcuterie,
You have a board,
like a cutting board kind of
and
thing
you have
comes
a
out.
pound of butter on
No, you do not put a pound of butter. I mean, that's like having a little bowl with butter on your table.
Exactly.
Excuse me.
Okay.
So let's assume you order bread or something else, whatever is the thing. The thing is on the board. Underneath the thing is smeared butter, in all, not like a stick of butter, but smeared butter. It's obviously got to be soft enough to spread. And as this woman, Justine Snacks, said, there may be lemon zest in one corner, maybe they're pickled onions, depending on what the thing is, other kind of additions. But the platform on which the item, the bread or something, is balanced is a smear of butter. So not only is it beautiful, but it's fun.
So hold on. So you take a spoon and you go in for the pickled onions and you eat the pickled onions and the butter?
On bread.
Or whatever the hell the thing is.
I would like a cracker, actually. I'd like a seeded cracker. That would just
beautiful. What are you not understanding
here? Well, the pictures look like huge dollops of butter with jelly on top of it.
No, those are herbs and,
Come on,
edible
Marjorie.
flowers.
I mean, I love butter as much as the next person.
Yeah.
But it just does look a little...
No, the whole thing is...
It's kind of like mayonnaise,
Oh, my God.
Can I
tell you something?
a big thing of mayonnaise.
No, it's not.
I thought what you were going to say next is what's the difference between that and a stick of butter? What's different is your thing is swimming in a sea of butter.
Okay.
It's this whole shtick with butter on it.
Okay.
Lying on top of that is the thing, and you scoop up a little piece. Maybe you put it on your bread or whatever the cracker was that Callie. I mean, talk.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I know I
Wait a
tried
second.
it. I should be
Excuse
more
me.
adventurous.
Okay, it's not adventurous. It's like you spread butter on a board and then you put it on the damn bread.
This is not spread. This is like 5 sticks of butter in these
Can you
pictures.
trust me on one
Okay,
thing?
I'll
This
trust
is
you.
huge. You are going to love it.
All right.
And by the way, that's Callie I'm talking to.
I know.
But you are as well, because you're like, you eat sticks of butter.
I do like butter.
Yeah.
I do like butter. I mean, the baked potato, you're not supposed to have that much butter because
No,
it's not
you're
very
not.
good for you. But, I mean, how can you have, certain things?
I think it would be, it just reminds me of being, in the past, we've been in very fancy restaurants where they make the butter all pretty. So they just make the butter pretty on a board. That's
Exactly.
all.
Okay.
Like
that's
spread
right.
it out kind of thing.
Right.
You got Jamie. Let's get a butterboard guest. Either this Justine Snacks or somebody.
Yeah,
in here
and that's the other thing. Is her name really Justine Snacks?
Her last name is Doron.
Oh.
Okay, and Snacks is her TikTok thing.
Yeah, I figured she must have
that's
changed
really
it. Yeah, that would be a
disappointing.
little bit too much of a coincidence.
Yeah.
Butterboards and snacks, a little bit too much, don't you think?
Yeah.
My mother was thinking of naming me Snack Sprouty, actually. But she decided she wasn't. In any case, what are you doing on any of these shows? What are you doing this week?
It's truly an under-the-radar show. We, in our first segment, we are looking at rewilding, which is a concept of letting nature take its course. People do it out in the woods, of course, and in rural areas, but we're talking about urban rewilding. What does it mean to do native flowers and invite certain kind of really predators and small animals
in a
back
city?
In the city, because it's for climate change. You let nature take its place.
That's great.
So lots of people
That's
are interested in
great.
it. It's a big movement, and so we have some really interesting scientists who are excited about it and are telling us about it, and also giving us, the downs of it. So we're talking the downside of it, the pros and cons of urban rewilding. So that's the first segment, and the second segment is a local Marlboro couple during the pandemic were leaders of a movement called driveway choirs. Remember when people could not sing together, and they figured out how to sing apart in cars?
Of course.
So they were one of the primary movers and shakers of figuring out the process.
That's great.
They've done a documentary, and it's fabulous, and it's called Drive to Sing.
Oh, I love this.
Some of the music just gives you chills. It's so beautiful.
That's
These people
great.
can really sing.
I gotta
They're
write
so
that down.
excited to be able to sing again. It's being shown at a festival this weekend here and around the country. And these people, for free, helped about, more than 60 choirs come together.
Hey, before you leave, how do you feel about cider donuts? Our next guest
my God,
is like the cider donut
didn't miss
king
it.
of
I
New
didn't
England.
miss it.
No,
I'm
he's
so
coming up
happy.
in a
He's
second.
coming right now.
I'm so excited.
I stick around because Aiden drove around and actually got cider donuts from a bunch of places.
Yeah.
My single favorite sweet thing in the world.
The last one that I had that I love was at the Boston Public Market.
Yeah, actually, it's on
They
his list. He talks about
this guy
yeah.
mentions that
Yeah.
as the only place in Boston he thinks is up to snuff. It's Alex
So stick
Schwartzman.
around. We'll share a little donut with you.
And
Callie, it's great to
It's
see
going
you.
to be
We
able
love
to
you.
eat
Thank you
on
so
the
much.
air. I'm very excited about it. We've been speaking with Callie Crossley, host of Under the Radar. You just heard her describe this Sunday's show. It's on right here on Sunday nights, 89.7 at 6 o'clock. Callie also hosts Basic Black, which is on tonight at 7:30. And you can also hear Callie's great commentaries on Mondays for GBH's Morning Edition. Okay, as just foretold, after a quick break, if butter spreads don't do it for you, and I'm suspicious, maybe this show's next guest will. Alex Schwartz is better known to the world as the apple cider donateur, and he'll teach us a thing or two about the essential New England fall delicacy after a quick break. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, criminal justice reform advocates are reacting to Maura Healey's promise to pardon those convicted of marijuana offenses if she's elected governor. Local leaders are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act and its impact on Boston Harbor. And the state's Gaming Commission is meeting again today as they try to hammer out a start date for sports betting in Massachusetts. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And South County, Rhode Island. You can see Misquamicut Beach transform into the mythical city of Atlantis for the first annual Atlantis Rising, an international sand sculpture event, now through the 10th. SouthCountyRI.com. And Vantage Healthcare, providing primary care physicians throughout New England. Vantage brings their primary care team on site to assisted living communities, nursing homes, and more. Learn more at myvantagehcs.com.
I cannot believe I have a donut in my mouth when we're coming back from the spot. Hold on a second. Can you just sit where you are? Welcome back to, this is horrible. Welcome back, that's really good. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. In 2020, this guy, Alex Schwartz, he's here now, like a lot of us, was looking for a way to stay occupied and engage with the outside world during the pandemic. Well, his solution is a great one. He started an Instagram account where he'd review apple cider donuts. He became Alex, the cider donut reviewer, and cider donateur or some such thing. Set out to taste and review every cider donut place in New England. That Instagram page now has close to 10,000 followers. Millions of people have hit on this map that he'll talk about. He's reviewed dozens upon dozens of donuts at farm stands, country stores, the occasional supermarket, which he doesn't like, neither do I. Alex joins us now for a conversation and a donut tasting session. We have samples, thanks to Aiden, from a few different places: Russell Orchards in Ipswich, Bolton Spring Farms in Bolton, Red Apple Farm all the way out in Phillipston, Mass, wherever that is. Alex, it's nice to meet you. How are you?
Hello.
Hello to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's our pleasure.
Are you kidding? We are absolutely thrilled, and I can't think of anything better to do for a living than run around tasting apple cider donuts.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's the dream. And
Frankly,
shout out to Aiden for going and doing that.
Can I be honest with you? We didn't give a damn if you showed up, as long as the donuts did. But we're told we couldn't get the donuts without you being here, so we're glad to have you.
I mean, you can purchase them on your own, but I love that I made you think that I had to be here for this.
Exactly, you did.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, we're really not being fair because we really should be having these hot, right? They're not hot. But I've already sampled 2, and they're great. So tell us what you do.
What do I do?
Yeah.
I live a duality of lives, right?
Uh-huh.
I run a startup tech company, and then on the side, I'm a self-dubbed donut reviewer. So.
And how did this start?
It was back in 2020. Things were getting a little weird in the world, and I was living in Central Square in Boston at the time, and I was just driving up to New Hampshire and Vermont and Western Mass to go hiking and be out in nature alone. It's a nice, safe endeavor.
Yes.
And I would be somewhere and go, man, I wish there was a place that was selling apple cider donuts and making them hot and fresh. I wonder if there's one around me, because I grew up in New England, and it's a mainstay around
fall
here.
Tradition.
It's a fall tradition.
Apple picking and apple cider.
So how proud are your parents that you're the apple cider guy? Are they're thrilled to tell their friends?
Deeply proud.
He's a donateur.
Whatever the hell he is.
Yeah. Hey, let's get it right. Donateur.
So,
donateur.
And by the way, we're going to taste, I believe, four different samples.
Yeah.
You're going to explain to us the difference. When I read about you, it appears you believe, and I totally buy this, that both the location matters, the size of the apple matters. There are a lot of variables.
Oh, yeah.
What does matter and why?
I mean, if you get into the inside baseball of orchardry, you're going to get into it. I think the rating criteria, I'll go top down, is you're going to look at how is it fried, so that it's going to result in the exterior crispiness of the donut.
Totally.
And then, what was the interior? Is it going to be spongy and light and airy, or is it going to be heavy and dense? Are you going to eat this donut and feel instant regret and not be able to, walk around for the rest of the day? Or is it going to feel, light? Then you've got the cinnamon sugar topping. You've got the actual warmth of, did it come off of the fryer? Did you see it made in front of you? When you open up that bag, is there steam coming out?
That is the best. It is about as good as it gets. It's unbelievable.
I think you're zoning in on my vibe here, which is you could have a 7 out of 10 donut in a 10 out of 10 experience location, right? So you're outside, the ambiance, right?
Yeah.
You're there at the orchard with crunchy leaves under your feet.
Totally.
You've got the hot bag of cider donuts. You're looking at a beautiful vista. It's the perfect temperature out. That can elevate the donut experience. But you could have a 10 out of 10 donut, eat it in a dirty parking lot. It's not going to...
Or in a supermarket. You're against the supermarket, which is just not fun, even if it's from one of the great orchards.
I mean, accessibility versus,
the Dunkin' Donuts apple cider just doesn't make it in your estimation.
That's true. Yeah, I don't want to start a religious war, but I mean, the Dunkin' Donuts cider donut is not really cutting it.
So your hands clean or what?
I don't care.
Here's what I'd like you to do.
I've just been touching donuts.
Let's go down. We have 4 samples. Roach Brothers, Russell Orchards. I don't know what these other 2 are. You'll tell us in a minute.
I feel like we should split one.
Break it in half.
Yeah.
Give Margie and me
Or even a quarter, because
you don't have to eat the whole thing.
I don't want to start with the disappointment here.
What do you want to start with?
Let's start with the Bolton Farms, because you said Russo's was the best.
Russell's, not Russo's.
Russell's. Yeah. Okay, let's go with Bolton Spring.
Okay. Break it up
I'll
and
break
hand it
this
to
one.
us. And start describing it to us with some level of expertise, if you don't mind.
I already tried this one. This one is really good.
With some level of expertise.
Really
Start talking.
good.
Go ahead.
Well, I got to eat first.
Oh my God. What's that one? Where's that from?
This is Bolton Spring Farms.
Okay, and
Bolton, Mass.
What's good and bad about it?
So this is probably the most of the 4. I haven't tasted all 4, but it's probably going to be the most moist.
It is very moist and cakey.
Spongy, light, airy. You could eat. You ate a third of one, and you could probably eat a whole one and then still feel totally fine. Probably the other end of the spectrum is going to be like Red Apple Farms, which is closer to that fair fried dough type of feel with a lot of oil.
And I forgot already. The spongy one is from where again?
Bolton Spring Farms.
Yeah.
In Bolton.
It's far away.
Which, by the way, there's Bolton Orchards right down the street. So if you want to go to Bolton, it seems like a headquarters for
that's
great
really exciting.
cider donuts.
Now, you said that one of the other end of the spectrum is from where?
As I eat and
You
talk.
can speak.
It's okay. It's okay.
Good.
Usually it gets thrown off the air for this, but not
here.
today.
Yeah.
Not today.
What is it?
So the Red Apple Farm is going to be the traditional fried fair donut, and they have it, at Public Market.
I do know.
And you can go out to Phillipston to the actual location, or you could be at Wachusett Mountain and ski down the Black Diamond Run, and then pull off to the little cider cabin, and they have the
That's
Red Apple.
wild.
That 10 out of 10 for experience and a 5 on that.
And
one.
this is crispier on the outside, correct?
Yeah, so I will
move it. Let's have
How
this.
do
Come on.
people know? How do people know
What?
that the apple cider donut place?
This guy's demanding.
He's so rude. Isn't he?
It's so rude.
Yeah, he's
truly.
so rude. So how do people know that the bottom of the Black Diamond Slope is the apple cider donut place? They have a big sign.
Yeah, I mean, you're basically going down a run, and then you see this cabin with like smoke coming out, and they're actually making the donuts, and they have a fire, and you can get off your skis and go in.
My God.
The audience laughter here is great.
Oh, what's that place again?
Red Apple Farm.
Oh,
Red
where's
Apple
that?
Farm.
Phillipston. Or down the street.
Okay, or down the street, right.
I'm still with Bolton Springs.
Wow.
I'm still with Bolton
You're going
Springs.
Bolton Springs?
Yeah, absolutely.
See, there's
Too much sugar for you. That's why you don't like that. Is that right?
A lot of sugar.
Bolton Springs is very cakey. I like that.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, but you've got a good fry, crispy bit, and so
that.
I see that's your.
Now,
that's
do
your
you have
jam.
anything to cleanse your palate in between these, or what do you recommend?
We have coffee,
Seriously.
Jim.
I mean,
I'm talking to Alex. Alex is the expert, Marjorie. Let's hear what he has to say here. Go ahead.
I feel like there's going to be a fist fight that's going to start
it's not gonna be a
here.
fist fight.
The donuts are bringing us together.
We'll see if it does.
We'll see.
So, what is should you drink something in between? Does it spoil the experience, or not?
I don't think it spoils it. I mean, I don't know about dunking, but having a back and forth between some hot cider
That's a very good point.
would be a good
cider,
right?
of course.
Yep.
Of course.
Who doesn't love hot cider too? So I read in one of the pieces about you, there's two terms that either you came up with or you embrace, and they're the same thing: donut dovetailing or opportunistic orcharding. I love both of them. What are they?
I mean, it's basically the idea that you're going somewhere, probably not. I think in the best version of it, you're not wanting to be there. You're at the DMV, the RMV, whatever, and you're out somewhere, and you go, is there a donut nearby that I can dovetail my...
How much do you love that?
Have this low experience and then cap it off with a great high experience with a donut.
I don't know if there's any donut place near the RMV on Downtown Crossing. Do you think? I don't think so. I don't think so.
More like out there, like
yeah,
let's say
you're further out there. But as you said, that you can get the one place you can get these Red Apple Farm donuts is at the
Boston Public Market. They're making the mini ones though. It's not the full size.
I was just going to say I've had them made like fresh out of the oil or whatever the hell you
can get it fresh.
Fine.
They're doing it right.
Now let me ask you. Marjorie once asked this question, but she's too shy.
Oh, okay.
This is not like a scam. You actually know what you're talking about. Is that?
This is my long con on all of you. I have no idea what I'm doing, right?
Okay, I'm ready. Russell, we tried that already. We'll get back to that in a minute. Let's go to, is it Roach?
Well, we didn't, you tried it before on
Yeah,
before
do
air?
it again. Let's have it on, because that's your...
I have some. I have mine, right?
I mean, this was, okay, you've got yours.
Yep.
So 2020 winner, I think. First year I dubbed, Russell Orchard's the best.
Okay.
So I feel like...
Why is it the best?
That's very
they have a strong opinion on cider donuts. They have this little sign at Russell Orchards, and it says, here's the history of the donut, and they don't put the cinnamon sugar on the outside, and they think, well, it's not needed. You want to sweeten the dough. And they kind of have this air of, we invented the cider donut. So there's some this is a history lesson, I think, that we need to dive into to figure out.
Is this in Ipswich? Where's this place?
In Ipswich.
It's very apple-y.
Mm-hmm.
And there's
really?
a theory about that, too, right?
In the rating criteria, I forgot about if it doesn't show through with some kind of apple taste, then it's just a donut.
You do know that it's an apple cider donut.
But didn't somebody say...
That, right?
Just because there's a sign that says apple cider donut
That's a good point.
doesn't mean you're questioning the validity of everything around you.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
So Alex Schwartz, didn't I read somewhere, though, that it depends on when the apple is harvested?
Oh,
Isn't that a big
that was a
thing?
good one. Okay, so I was at an orchard up in Maine, and the experience was I got some donuts, and they had a little swinging chair sitting out in the orchard, and there was this maybe late 80s, older woman sitting there knitting. And so I walk over to go sit and eat the donuts, and I look at her and I go, well, either she's just hanging out, enjoying this, beautiful moment, or she owns this entire farm and orchard and everything. And I sit down and she's like, oh, you're enjoying the donuts? I was like, yes. And I said, how are you involved here? And she's like, oh, my family, I'm like 5th generation owner of this farm.
I totally love
we
that.
start getting into the, again, inside baseball of apple stuff. And so I said, I just tried your cider. It's very tart. I love it. It was early season. And she goes, oh, well, that's just the progression of the sweetness of an apple. So if you get it in August, you're going to taste more of a tart apple. And then if you get, the November, October apples, they're going to be on the sweeter side. And then if you're putting that into your batter, you're going to end up with the product that's going to
Do you know anything about apples or just... no, I'm serious. I didn't mean that as a joke. We had a guy on, just before you were here, Jamie. Marjorie, you'll remember. We had a guy on who wrote this beautiful book about apple
All about
varieties.
apples, different kinds of apples.
Like hundreds
Gorgeous.
of apple. I can't think
I
of
mean,
the
I feel
guy's
like
name.
I'd be their friend.
No,
Yeah,
it's really
you would.
fabulous. Let's try the Roach Brothers.
Well, that's
deal.
the thing. I mean, does a Macintosh...
disappointment.
Does a donut from a Macintosh apple taste better than a Pink Lady apple or a... what's the apple that you really like?
Honeycrisp.
Yeah.
Honeycrisp. I
mean,
they're
getting
all...
into ingredient philosophy, right? Like it's going to be part of the end goal or the end
Wait, that's a
model.
great question. Do you have any idea what kind of apple went into the ones that we're eating?
Absolutely no clue.
You don't? Okay,
No.
so let's try the Roach Brothers thing.
Okay, well, I mean, who knows
Now,
how
these
this
are
got made
Roach
either.
Brothers. I mean, these aren't from
I
the
feel like this
apple
is the
orchard.
trick part of
Okay.
the experience.
Thank you. Talking to Alex Schwartz, who's the Apple, whatever. What are you again? The cider donateur.
Cider donateur.
Okay. Well.
Yeah.
And these you don't like because it's in a soup.
Well, I haven't tried Roach Brothers, but I mean, I have a prediction.
No.
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 It's Boylston Springs for me.
It's not horrible. It's not in the top 4 here.
Leave
but
me one of those
what's in the
Boylston
top 4?
Springs donuts, please, Jim.
See, I love
What's
that
the
because they're the unsung heroes. They're a small shop, and I tried to go. I was there recently, and I asked them how they make the donuts, and I was like, "Oh, could I go in the back to see?" And they're like, "No, we don't take photos. We don't have interviews." I was like, "Okay, so they're doing it."
So,
they're legit.
Alex, I don't know if is your skill level such that if you didn't know that this is from Roach Brothers and we gave you this and we just said this is an apple cider donut, we're not telling you where it came from, would you have the same review of the quality of the donut as you have because you know it comes from a supermarket? Be honest. No, I'm serious.
Yeah, I mean, so hold on. Let me just taste it.
Okay, good.
Listen to
taste it.
this. We had Bolton Orchard's apple cider donuts at our wedding
It's a
5
texter.
years ago tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
This is from Steve
Happy
Kerrigan.
anniversary.
Oh, people are.
Steve Kerrigan, our guy.
From Lancaster. It's the same guy.
Former
He's-
lieutenant.
He
what
ran
is
for-
that?
he
Is
ran
he
for
from
lieutenant
Lancaster,
governor.
Steve Kerrigan?
I don't know.
Former lieutenant governor candidate? He is.
I think he's
We
the
don't
same
know.
guy.
Okay.
To,
What's your
to
point?
answer your question,
Yep.
I don't think this donut was fried. I think it's a baked donut
It's a
because they
fake-
have
it's fake.
baked.
Fake.
So it depends. You have different types of production. It's a bakery at the supermarket, so they're not going to have the $5,000 donut robot that like shoots out the dough and has a conveyor belt with the oil. So they're doing it a completely different way, and you can taste the difference.
Yeah, I think that's a
Now
good
here's
analysis.
the thing about going apple picking. You go apple picking and it's really, you pick the apples in 5 minutes or less than that and you're getting stung by bees. Then you maybe go for the hayride after that.
Wow, you've had some bad experiences.
I've had
with
some
apple
bad
picking.
experiences, that's right. You have to do it with the kids,
When your
right?
kids
It was
are
one of
young,
those
you
things,
gotta
oh my
take
God,
them.
we just go apple picking.
You got to pretend like you're having fun, too.
But the best part is always
horrible.
afterwards, the donuts, right? You go in and have the donuts, and I have to be more adventurous and try these different places. Where's Red Apple Farm?
So Phillipston, so it's
Phillipston,
what,
okay.
like 75, 90 minutes west. You just go on Route 2 until you hit an orchard.
So Alex Schwartz, who's the cider donut expert, you voted. You're the boss. Russell Orchards has been the winner in your first couple of years of this, right?
They're killing it.
And
Russell
it's
Orchards,
the least adorned. Is it fair to say?
Yeah.
It's the most basic donut.
It's a basic donut. When you go there, they're always making it fresh. They have enough people wanting that donut. And I think I told a story on the Instagram when I did that review, which was I went there, I got at least a dozen because I had all kinds of friends that wanted me to bring some back. I think I might have gotten 2 dozen. Anyway, I was in line and the person in front of me was a couple, and one of them says, "Hey, how many of those donuts should we get?" And the boyfriend goes like, "I don't know, should we get like 3 or 4?" And the look on her face was like, I think we might even break up right now in the line. Like, I thought I was going to witness the collapse of that relationship. She's like, at least 2 dozen, what is wrong with you? So I think you go out, you have this experience, everyone's going to want
Well, that's actually another good question. So we all agree, because we've all had them, fresh out of the oil at the place is the best.
That's gotta be.
So you take 2 dozen with you, as this woman wanted to do. How long does it retain its joyfulness?
I think so. Somehow the Bolton Spring ones, it lasted like 3 days because they were still moist, right? Like, I don't know. These were gotten, 24 hours ago, and they're still moist. And then those are super dry because they were probably made days before.
It's a radio show, so when you point at it, it's not that helpful.
That's
this is a live stream. I see a version of myself.
The Russos are super dry.
Roach Brothers.
Roach
It's not
Brothers.
Russo.
Sorry.
Russo is not here.
They shut down. Russo shut down in
market,
Watertown. It's gone.
Well, here's the trick.
Yeah.
Microwave them. 10 seconds per donut.
Really?
And that's allowed.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean,
okay.
I'll allow it.
Thank you.
As the donut.
Alex, let's get down to it. Do you make any money doing this?
I have made a total of $300, which is I took
in 3 years.
In 3 years, I took one photo of a cider donut being held up in front of, it was Bolton Spring, and a Massachusetts travel magazine contacted me and said, "Hey, can we get that photo? We'd love to produce it." And I took that money and I funneled it directly to a graphic artist to do a logo for the
that's
donut
great.
tour.
So what's your next deal? I mean, I assume you're going to expand this empire. What are you doing next?
Oh yeah, I mean global syndication.
No, I'm serious. What are you obviously have bigger sites. What are you going to do vis-a-vis food or donuts
Bigger
or whatever
sites.
next?
I mean, I think you got to get the tech side of my life to retire, get acquired, whatever that is. Then I can expand the map. Everyone's complaining about the fact
tell us about the map. I'm so sorry, and how you find it.
Well, I mean, it's just a custom Google map, and if you go to the Cider Donut Tour Instagram, there's a link, and you can get there. Or you just
DONATEUR.
yeah, you can just Google Cider Donut Map. There's not that many of them out on the internet.
And what did people find on it?
But there have been people complaining. I mean, it's a great resource. It's got over 300 locations all in New England, but New England is a rigid definition. The state of New York has tons of
So you're going to do New York next?
And everyone's like, well, why isn't it in there? Because I'm like, well, they should have been part of New England. So I think if I can take the time and energy to expand outward, that'll be the next
Yeah, and Washington State, you said, is full of these great...
Anywhere there's apples, there's going to be cider donuts.
Apples. That's
true. In light of the fact, I mean, it's great you've made $300 in 3 years. It's really impressive. So in light of the fact that since you were nice enough to come, we hope the other thing, do you want to spend 30 seconds and tell us what your startup is, or do you not? You don't have to.
I mean, we're building a competitor to Slack called called Tangle. So check it out.
Tangle.
Yeah, Tangle. Yeah, there you go. See, now this is all been
That's great.
I would like that. I would like a competitor.
How do all of you feel out there that we're eating donuts and you don't have any? Is that great?
Is this working for
everybody?
everybody?
Is that a great radio show?
Wow.
They're not that happy.
They have
getting a little hostile at the library.
How did they get a torch in here?
In all seriousness, this is really clever, and we're really glad to meet you, Alex. Thanks so much. Really
Thank you so much for having me.
Alex Schwartz, let's hear it for him.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alex. By the way, Boylston Springs, the ambiance is good.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
definitely. Just want to make sure, because I really like the donuts.
Head over there.
Okay, we've been speaking and eating with Alex Schwartz. He's a donateur, the man behind the Alex the Cider Donut Reviewer, the Instagram page devoted to, of course, apple cider donuts. Thank you very much. This was great fun. Up next, 50 years on Saturday morning TV screens, Velma from Scooby-Doo has joined the pantheon of cartoon characters outed by their creators. We'll talk to our media maven, Sue O'Connell, about that. And also, since she has a lot of expertise in this area, why do people applaud themselves on stage? Sue O'Connell is going to explain this. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library.
A race in New Hampshire could decide who controls the U.S. Senate as Democrat Maggie Hassan squares off against Trump-supporting Republican Don Bolduc. I'm Adam Riley. On this week's Talking Politics, we dive into that contest. Plus, another suicide at Bristol County Jail raises questions about mental health care in prisons across the state. Talking Politics tonight at 7 on GBH2 and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Ocean State Job Lot. Ocean State Job Lot's charitable foundation strives to make a positive impact on all of its communities, partnering with customers to help those in need. Learn more at oceanstatejoblot.com. And Boston Ballet, presenting My Obsession, the thrilling season opener with irresistible music from Stravinsky to the Rolling Stones, on stage at the Citizens Bank Opera House now through October 16th. Tickets at bostonballet.org.
Trusted. local news. This is 89.7 WGBH, WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. Boston's local NPR.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browdy. She is Marjorie, and we're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. You can listen to Sue, but if you're not here, this great Honkfest band from Santiago, Chile is playing in exactly 20 plus minutes. I'd come on down because they are really spectacular and upbeat and wonderful. But first, here to take on the social norms and abnormalities today is media maven Sue O'Connell. Sue is the co-publisher of Bay Windows and South End News, contributor to Current on NBC-LX and NECN. Hello, Sue O'Connell.
Hello, good to see you.
This is important. She's applauding for
Okay,
herself.
I think we have to delve into this
Yeah, I think
right
you do,
away.
too.
I would like to point out I self-revealed this story.
You did?
I
You
forwarded.
self-revealed it.
I self-revealed. I
Okay.
felt spoken to. I felt seen. So I thought I would share it with
Well,
you.
explain the story.
The
Go ahead.
famous Miss Manners, Judith Martin. I'm not sure if she writes it anymore. It might be her children, Nicholas and Jacobina, or maybe they're her, I don't know, sisters or whatever.
Whomever, yeah.
But she weighs in on what people should think about entertainers, celebrities, and common folks.
Common folk. That's
on
me.
stage and television applauding themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And tell us what she said.
Well, it's also something I do here on a regular basis.
You do.
When I show up, I start to applaud.
Because if you don't, who will?
No one will. And it's a radio show. We don't have the applause lights like they do.
We should have the applause lights.
Miss Manners responded that yes, self-aggrandizement is rampant and not just on social media. Miss Manners knows that it's commonplace to declare that it is important to love oneself, but that does not make public displays of that affection palatable to others.
There you go.
So I'm
That
all
is
for
such a stick in the mud
You know what?
kind
I'm
of
going to
thing.
keep. If I don't clap for myself, no one else is.
I'd like to say two things.
Yes.
One, I have never seen a guest come with more notes. That's number one. You were really prepared.
Ready.
And number two, I have to say, I was with Miss Manners when this trend, it's only a handful of years old, when performers would clap for themselves. But I hated it. I've grown to totally love it. It's sort of like, they're not really applauding themselves, they're applauding you.
Yeah, you're applauding back.
And it's like
it's
collaborative.
participating.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't honestly think I'm applauding myself. I think I'm, yes, a little bit. I think I'm getting everyone to be involved and participate. And what are you supposed to do if you're up on stage to give back to somebody? You're applauding them back. So
I think I've
take
eaten too
that,
many
Miss
donuts.
Manners. You ate too. She's just crashing out. She's having a sugar crash
You got
already.
a lot left, too, let me tell
I
you.
want to give a shout out to the Honey Pot Farms, where we get our cider
Where's that?
donuts. That's in Stowe, Massachusetts,
Oh.
and Wardbury Farm in Sharon.
Very nice.
Yeah, there's a lot of Honey Pot Hill and Stowe.
Yep, that's where we go.
Yeah,
She just said
people,
that.
some people are texting about
fine.
that as well. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of very strong opinions on the best donuts. We have one, Berlin Farms in Berlin. And it's going on and on and on and on and on. Okay,
So can we-
let's move
go
on
ahead,
to
Margaret,
something.
you
Let's
go
move
ahead.
on to something serious, which is very scary. Actually, it's the number of Republican nominees for office. 299 of them who deny that the 2020 election was won by President Biden.
Whoa. 299 is not a good enough retelling. It is a majority of the
53%.
major office
That's right.
candidates
That's right.
that
It
the
is a
Washington Post
majority.
surveyed. So it's
And
not just 300.
It has terrible implications, which you're going to explain.
Yeah, it's more than half. The Washington Post did a survey. They both looked at the candidates' websites and also their social media posts. So of the 569 folks who are running for office who are identified as Republicans, 53% of them have challenged or refused to accept the fact that Joe Biden was legitimately elected president. Now, even if you take out some of the candidates who are not going to win, who are total fringe candidates, what's really disturbing to me about this, and I think you'll both agree, is that there are a number of governors, state secretaries, and other offices that oversee elections, security, and elections that believe that the election of Joe Biden was fraudulent. And that's
Or
the
they
part-
don't believe it and they're pretending they do to win.
Either way, just saying it just is exceptionally disturbing. So I would urge folks, if you're voting and you need to look at your ballot and understand who's on it and not just vote for the party that you think you belong to.
You know, for those who only think these are fringe candidates, by the way,
and they are not.
They may be fringe, but a lot of them, 174 of the 229 are unopposed, so they're going to be elected. A lot of the others, for example, the guy running for governor of my home state, the Republican, was at January 6th and is an election denier and is within a handful of votes from being the next governor. You're going to hear two voices. We just picked two. A guy running for Arizona Secretary of State and current Arizona House of Representatives member. He's been on TV a lot, Mark Fincham. But the more important voice you're going to hear here is currently the minority House leader, Kevin McCarthy. And the reason we're playing him is listen carefully to what he says. He's the second voice. If the odds makers and the experts are right, he will be the next Speaker of the House. And most people think that's the second most powerful office in America after the president. Here's Fincham and then McCarthy.
We have more questions than we have answers, and that's why I call it irregularities instead of fraud.
President Trump won this election, so everyone who's listening, do not be quiet. Do not be silent about this.
The future likely Speaker of the House, President Trump won this election. I mean, that is really scary.
Yeah, it's disturbing, and it's so you might think, well, what does that mean to me? I mean, if I'm in Massachusetts, it might be safe, or we have a constitution, we have these election committees locally, and a lot of as you know, most elections are executed locally. Well, what that means is these cases could be tied up in court. I mean, they could bring lawsuits, they can block investigations, they can instigate investigations, they can jam up our electoral process, and that's just in the minimum, that's just in the least.
By the way, my understanding is
fake electors as well. Can't they fake
There's
electors?
depends on state by state. There's a number of things that they can do.
When you say can't they I mean, ultimately, and we know who they are, but so far they've been good on election issues. I shouldn't say on election issues, on Trump-related election issues. Those cases go to the Supreme Court. I mean, the whole a lot of these, if this case, without giving people a headache, goes to the Supreme Court that we've discussed, I think with Carol Rose and Judge Gertner, which says that state courts cannot review the decisions about elections that legislatures make. Republican legislatures, mostly in red states, can essentially authorize fake electors, and even if it's clear they're fake, the state court can't overturn that. That case before the Supreme Court is a life-changing kind of thing, and they're going to decide that in the next few months. We're talking to Sue O'Connell.
Sue, we don't have the most important answer yet to the question about what has happened to these state police officers who retired in their 50s and then were involved in this scandal, this overtime scandal, about whether they get to keep their pensions, which are really significant if you're a state cop, even if you retire in your 50s. But we do have this former state police lieutenant has just pled guilty in this overtime scandal. So explain to people what it is and what's happened.
Yeah, this is the case of the State Police of Massachusetts and Lieutenant David Keefe. And since 1996, a long time, you might have heard, especially if you have members of your family who are in law enforcement, the old myth you thought that they had a quota, that suddenly there'd be a lot of people pulled over on the Mass Pike toward the end of a month, and people generally say, no, they have no quota. What would be in it for them to actually get more tickets, right? Well, one of the reasons they did this was because there's a quid pro quo that state troopers could punch out or leave the job early and still get credit for having worked as long as they were perceived as generating income for the Commonwealth by writing more tickets. Now, certainly I don't disagree that we probably could write more tickets. There's a lot of problems on the road. But they were basically stealing overtime and stealing their work hours from the state. And this was so rampant that since 1996 that it became just part of the culture, especially, I think, in Troop E.
Troop E, which has been disbanded.
But it just, how many people had to know that this was going on? Almost every single officer in that troop, every single supervisor in that troop knew that they were doing this, and it was just how they did it. And it's theft of public property, it's theft of public funds.
Can we talk about that? We were not 100% sure what the facts are here. I heard the story this morning on Morning Edition with Paris and Jeremy. And then Marjorie and I and Jamie talked about this thing. This guy, Keith, is that his name? $20,000 fine, 2 years probation, and a lot of community service, which to me is not much of a sentence for stealing tax money, particularly if you're in law enforcement. But the thing we looked up this morning, when he was originally charged, he was charged by the law enforcement, by the prosecutors, with having stolen $23,500. So if they are right, he is not only being told you robbed the bank and all you have to do after you've pled guilty is return the money you stole and we're fine. Apparently, he's not even returning all the money he stole. No, it's not. He's keeping somewhere in the neighborhood of $3,000 to $4,000. But even if that $3,000 to $4,000 wasn't there, it's only $20,000. Can you explain to me how it's appropriate? You're a state cop. You're stealing money from the taxpayers, not once, but on an ongoing basis. And essentially, the sentence is return the money and you're good.
Well, what was the union defense on this, right? I mean, this is the issue.
Well, the former head of the union, I saw his picture in the Globe a couple of days ago. He's in legal trouble as well.
Yeah, I mean, if it's almost impossible to fire a police officer, law enforcement officer for murdering someone, why is it shocking that they're not going to get in a lot of trouble for simply stealing money? Stealing taxpayer dollars. I mean, simply as sarcasm.
We tried to find out, by the way, Marjorie raised a really good point, which is not in any of the stories we read. We tried to find out if he was also still collecting his pension, and we called both the AG's office and the U.S. attorneys, and we still haven't gotten, not their fault, we haven't gotten an answer.
Here's the thing that's very upset about this. Politicians, whether Democrats or Republicans, love the state cops. They love police in general. And it is a really unfair. I always think of these social workers who get underpaid, who have extremely dangerous jobs, taking children away from their parents. They don't get the deal that the state cops do, which is you can retire in your 50s and get a pension. If you want to retire in your 50s, that's great. But you shouldn't be able to collect your pension until you're 65, like almost everybody else. And if you're depending on Social Security...
Like everybody else who has a pension, which is almost nobody. But even Social Security, to get your maximum pension, you got to work until you're 70. So why state cops can't, if they want to go do desk jobs, they don't want to be jumping over fences or something, and I get that in their 50s. But it's just really, it's all about political coziness with the cop unions, and that is why cop unions get away with a lot of malfeasance, and nobody pays a price.
Listen, you can ask any law enforcement officer in the state of Massachusetts who is not a state police officer what they think about the state police, and you will get an earful. So it is...
They're very white, almost no women.
And they're bored all the time. I mean, I have a number of friends on the state police, and they're bored all the time. So they're not jumping over fences a lot of the time. They are necessary when it comes to the car crashes and the highway maintenance, and when in some small towns and small areas that don't have the police departments that they need to come in and investigate violent murders and violent activity. But, I would ask Maura Healey and Jeff Deal if it's not time to disband the state police and maybe come up with a new entity that mirrors what other states have, which are just highway patrol or just state support for police departments.
That's a great point.
Well, I'm not
never
sure.
thought of that.
I mean, the issue is not the structure. The issue.
Well, it is though, because they allowed this. The structure.
Well, why can't they allow it in the next structure? I mean, I'm not going to get.
Well, it's a lot of problems. They always promote from within.
Yep.
How do you be the person running the state police and then turn it on your fellow
this should
cops?
not go from guys who are criminals to an indictment of the whole state police force. There are problems. But again, as you and I were discussing yesterday in another setting, some governor said in a negotiation, state cops can retire at whatever age it is. They didn't unilaterally decide, and we're moving on from this.
Because they want to have the picture taken of them with the state police, and the state police are supporting me, and you should vote for me.
I'm worried about the guy who broke the law. We're going to try to find out about his pension before we talk to you on Monday. Now, we polled the audience at the library before you got here today, and the question that was on everybody's mind, which we knew you could answer, is Velma a lesbian? Is Velma a lesbian? Well, let's hear from Velma first.
Hear from Velma.
Here is Velma from Trick or Treat Scooby-Doo, in which a googly-eyed and speechless Velma first encounters costume designer Coco Diablo. Here it is.
And as promised, here are your Scooby snacks.
Hubba, hubba, hubba.
Yeah.
I think that answers the question.
Yes.
So
Velma's in love.
Velma a lesbian?
Yes, of course she is. The minute you saw Velma on Scooby-Doo, you were like, that's, I mean, not to deal in stereotypes, but that's a lesbian right there,
That's
Velma.
a lesbian.
And what I love about the story is that the New York Times, everyone wants to be careful, right? So the New York Times headline on this story is, after decades of hints, Scooby-Doo's Velma is depicted as a lesbian. It doesn't say that she is a lesbian, it says she's depicted. And as we have gone through this horrible racist backlash, or these racist backlash on Twitter about having a black Little Mermaid, who, by the way, a mermaid is not a human, so let's just get there.
Kinda like Santa Claus.
Members of the Middle Earth in the Lord of the Rings series, which are of color. By the way, they also are not humans, so they can come in different colors.
Thank you.
People aren't really pushing back on this on Twitter. I think people have finally said, yes, thank goodness Velma has come out. And there's other episodes, there's the real live action version of Scooby-Doo. Velma had some very lesbianic moments.
So, lesbianic. Now, we asked our colleagues to come up with a list of two things. Cartoon characters commonly thought to be LGBTQ, or those who are explicitly out as LGBTQ. And I have to say, on this list of commonly thought of, you know how parents always say, when my kids were young, when your Ruby was young, we all are supposed to say, God, I love that cartoon as much as my kid. Trust me, you didn't. We're all, one of the few exceptions that I loved Magic School Bus in ways that are indescribable. That was who's the plays Miss Frizzle?
Oh, what's her name? Yeah, I'm not.
John helped me back in Brighton. In any case, Miss Frizzle. Miss Frizzle is a lesbian.
I don't know about that. I would be indifferent to that.
I'm not done.
I would withhold.
Literally every single Disney villain ever. And now listen to this. This is a note to us. This is widely discussed in queer and feminist film theory. Mackenzie is one of our colleagues who has taken queer and feminist film theory classes, says that's the case. Nearly every single Lily Tomlin plays, I just realized, plays Miss Frizzle.
Right.
She's brilliant.
Oh, she is a lesbian.
That's a good point.
In real life.
That's a very good point.
So there
Thank
you go. You know how these things go now.
What do you think about nearly every single Disney villain ever?
I'm trying to think of, a lot of them are kind of drag queen-esque. Like
that's a good point, actually.
Cruella de Vil. I wouldn't necessarily say lesbian. I might say,
really
drag queen, gay man. And what's her name from The Little Mermaid?
The witch.
Yeah, she's pretty drag queen-esque.
Ursula.
She's pretty drag queen-esque.
Zoe.
Snow White's mother and Cinderella's stepmother. Again, pretty.
But what about Bugs Bunny?
Well, Bugs has had some different species, same-sex kissing on. I mean, he's kissed Elmer Fudd several times. Yeah. So, I think that we're...
On the mouth, if I remember
You're right. We was thinking about the same episode. Exactly.
So, can we
have another donut, Jim?
Yeah, boy, I've really...
She's in a sugar coma. He's in a sugar high. I mean,
I didn't want to eat my lunch because I wanted to not ruin my appetite for the donuts, and so I pounded down. I think too many donuts there.
I love that expression, by the way. Pounded down is one of the great.
There seems to be a kerfuffle, one of Jim's favorite words, about this movie Bros.
Oh boy,
which got great reviews, Rotten Tomatoes.
95%.
Yeah, really, really good movie. But the guy that made it is complaining that it wasn't a hit in the box office.
So you might know the guy who made it, the movie, Billy Eichner, who did Billy on the Street, and he's really, he's very talented, very funny. So they made a very big choice here with this movie. I haven't seen it yet, which means they're going to take away my gay card. Billy Eichner is really angry at every gay who didn't see it and every straight who didn't see it. So if you are gay or straight and didn't see the movie, Billy Eichner is going to call you.
He says if you didn't see it, you're a homophobe.
Yeah, you're a homophobe, and if you didn't see it and you're gay, you're self-loathing. He didn't say that, but that's what I believe he's going with. So the problem with this movie, which is, I haven't seen it, is very good, very funny. Number one, it is an R-rated rom-com. Okay, how many of you can say that you've seen an R-rated rom-com recently? They don't make R-rated.
They really don't.
They don't make them anymore now.
Why? Because young kids go?
Because families tend to go. Okay. You go with two of them on your first date. They sort of fell out of favor. If you go back and watch something like Pretty Woman or Working Girl with your kids, suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, there's full frontal nudity in it, because they used to make R-rated rom-coms. They don't do it anymore.
Wow.
This is a raunchy R-rated rom-com. what's his name?
Judd Apatow.
It's one of his movies, which are great, like Knocked Up and Bridesmaids, but it's being pitched as this sort of date movie for everyone to go see, but it's R-rated. They also didn't want to stream it. They just put it in movie theaters because they were pitching the idea that we should all go see movies together, which I love. I love being in the movie theater. Feel the laughter, feel the togetherness. It'll bring us all closer together. People who saw the movie in the movie theater. I spoke to Ty Burr, former Boston Globe movie critic today, and people really love seeing it in the movie theater. But you're not going to go to the movie theater to go see a rom-com, especially if it's R-rated. You'll probably wait to watch it when it's streaming. And the marketing of it was difficult because the marketing on one front was marketing to straight people who are less likely to see it, and gay people felt like, well, maybe there's not a lot of gay content in that for me if he's so desperate to get the straight people to go to the movie. So, and Billy... he's not a star. He's not a leading man. He's not someone who can open a movie. There's lots of high hopes on this Julia...
Child?
No.
Julia Child. Julia Child and Velma have just done a movie together. It's a lesbian potboiler.
George Clooney and Julia Roberts have this movie coming out. Two major stars.
Maybe there's something I didn't know.
And Jacques Pepin and Julia Child go at it.
So these two major stars who have this big rom-com coming out, which is not rated R, and people are worried, is it going to deliver? So you've got a guy who some of us know, who's the leading man in this, who's supposed to carry this over the finish line. So there's a lot of debate about, was it unfair of Billy Eichner to put all of his blame on the great gays and straights who didn't see the movie when it had a number of hurdles it had to get over, including being an R-rated rom-com?
The only reason I'm willing to come to his defense to a degree, because I don't know if he's right or not. $5 million, which is what they got is almost like nobody showing up.
Right.
For those, I actually read those things most Mondays. $5 million is like nobody went to your movie, and it's got to be pretty hard to work on something for a year.
Oh no, I totally
sort of
get it.
Semi-groundbreaking.
Totally get it, but then stream it.
No, that's a good point.
I don't know how well people are attending the movies these days anyway. I know
it opened up against this horror movie, Smile, which did really well. And you just have to think. You think of a straight couple in their 20s, a guy and a girl, and they're going to go to the movies, and they're on a date night. And homophobia, homo anxiety might have something to do with this. Is he really going to go see this movie where there's, a lot of gay male sex?
We talked about probably the most famous gay movie going, Brokeback Mountain, which won an Academy Award. And you were talking about after it won the Academy Award.
Not a rom-com.
Not a rom-com. No, it was a great movie, but it was a very
One
sad,
of the most painful.
very sad movie. But it did have Heath Ledger, the late Heath Ledger, and Jake Gyllenhaal,
and also one of the most famous directors in the world, Ang Lee.
But I wondered what the talk was at the time about
the expectations were low.
They were low.
They're like, we're gonna not release this as a major across the country on a major weekend. We're gonna do it in film festivals.
Yeah.
It's all about setting the proper expectation.
But you mentioned the leading man, Billy Eichner, who is no Heath Ledger.
He's no Heath Ledger, but
exactly.
If you have a good content, you've got this great director, you've got this great script, and you set the expectations correctly, you want to overcome it. Billy was on every you couldn't swing a dead cat without hearing Billy, which I appreciate. I mean, he's no Olivia Wilde when it comes to drumming up interest in his...
By the way, if he had swung a dead cat, he probably would have better numbers. What are you laughing about?
Our staff just sent us a picture of Bugs Bunny.
What's Bugs doing in it?
Well, he's wearing
a
purple lavender smoking jacket with an ascot, and he's wearing a beret, and he's looking...
Hey, I'm sorry, go ahead.
He's looking like a gay guy,
So,
and the caption reading, just saying...
So before Hugh Hefner...
RuPaul, Hugh Hefner.
Hugh Hefner's dead, right?
Yeah.
He's dead.
Is he dead?
Before you go...
We don't like him anymore.
After this fabulous band plays for us in a minute from Honkfest, which they're going to do in about 2 minutes, we're going to ask our listeners what I consider to be a fairly important question, which we thought you'd weigh in on before. Whether you slice your sandwiches horizontally or diagonally. And there's a lot of strong feeling on both. There's a party divide, there's a gender divide. What's your modus operandi? You do a horizontal.
Right down the middle, not diagonally.
Angle.
No, unless it's grilled cheese.
That's exactly what and why is that?
I have no idea.
That's exactly what the stories say.
I have no idea. I think because every grilled cheese sandwich that has ever been served to me has been
sliced diagonally.
And
great insight.
There's a reason for that, which we're going to discuss
we're not going to tell people.
later. That's right. This is the ultimate cheese.
Is butter involved?
No.
butter cider donuts, butter platters.
Butterboards are called.
Butterboards. No
Have
butter
a cider
involved.
donut on your way. Sue Collins, great to see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Woo!
It's really sad.
Not going to stop.
Sue O'Connell, our media maven,
See
is
you
the
soon.
co-publisher of Bay Windows and South End News and contributor to Current on NBC, LX, and NECN. And as Jim just said, we're going to hear some great music coming up. For 16 years, Honkfest has been a fall staple on the streets of Cambridge and Somerville. We're going to talk with the organizers, plus hear a fabulous band out of Santiago, Chile, Rim Bam Boom. Live Music Fridays continue after a short break. Stay with us. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, criminal justice reform advocates are reacting to Maura Healey's promise to pardon those convicted of marijuana offenses if she's elected governor. Local leaders are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act and its impact on Boston Harbor. And the state's Gaming Commission is meeting again today as they try to hammer out a start date for sports betting in Massachusetts. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Support for our programs comes from you. And Walden Local Meat, 100% grass-fed and pasture-raised beef, pork, and chicken from local farms, hand-delivered to your door, committed to supporting a better food system. Membership options and more at waldenlocalmeat.com. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, introducing new Medicare Advantage plans that provide a continuous circle of care. You can enroll starting October 15th. Learn more at massgeneralbrighamadvantage.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browning and Marge Regan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Since its founding in 2006, the annual Honk Festival, we've had them here a lot of times, has provided musicians and progressive leaders an opportunity to make their voices and instruments heard throughout the streets of our community. We're joined now by Ken Field and Cecily Miller, co-organizers for the annual Honk Festival in Somerville and Cambridge. Starts today, runs through the weekend. We'll give you more details in a couple of minutes. In a couple of minutes, you're going to hear this fabulous band. We heard them rehearse before the show, performing this year's festival. They hail all the way from Santiago, Chile. Rim Bam Boom. They're going to play in a minute for Live Music Friday. Ken and Cecily, it's good to see you both.
Good to be here.
So we apologize for the cookie and donut crumbs that were all over the tables there. So let's start with you, Cecily. Tell us about Honkfest. What is it for people that don't know?
Oh, Honkfest is a wonderful, joyful, anarchistic celebration of artistic freedom and music and positive energy and political activism that unfolds in Davis Square, powered by hundreds of brass band musicians from all over New England, sometimes all over the world. And it's just an extraordinary event where people have complete freedom of expression. They're invited to dance in the streets, and we can enjoy music that comes from New Orleans traditions, from Eastern European traditions. Is really quite extraordinary. The biggest street party I've ever been to.
And Ken, I want to hear them soon, so let's hear what you have to say to this, and then let's get some music. This is essentially a mix of fabulous music and activism. I mean, that's what separates this from a lot of similar things, right?
Yeah. These are most of the bands we invite. Almost all the bands we invite are bands that are doing this not because they want to get rich or famous. They're bands because they want to make a difference in the world. They want to use their music to affect positive change in the world.
Can I tell you, ordinarily we talk a little bit more, and we'll talk to you again in a minute before we hear music, but when we heard, they were so exciting this morning. My understanding is you're playing something called Carabuela. Is that correct, ladies and gentlemen? By the way, you look fabulous, you guys. I mean, you look really good. Take it away. Here they are. Bam Boom.
Fantastical.
We're going to talk to a couple of their leaders in a second.
So Cicely, if people go to Davis Square to hear the Honkfest, how do they know which causes? I mean, is there signs that say we're doing it for this effort or that effort or this country or that country?
Well, no. Well, let me just say that one of the things that sets this apart from a festival is that all the bands play on the street. And so there's a kind of egalitarian feeling between the musicians and the public. The bands play in their own communities for activist causes. Activism isn't necessarily so visible on Saturday at the festival parade, other than a basic principle that art is for everyone and that art should be everywhere, meaning music in this case. However, we have started doing something called Elm Street, where we invite visual artists to manifest that sense of political activism that when everyone's having a good time dancing to music maybe isn't so clear. So we have artists who are working on climate change, who are working on plastic pollution, who are working on housing justice, some artists who are working with a mutual aid society for Somerville and Medford, the idea of helping out your neighbors, creating a local safety net. So that is a place where you'll actually see a political perspective and be invited to participate.
If I may,
the parade. We just have to say, the next day, the parade will have tons of banners.
Okay, people are going to remember none of this. How do they find out, Ken, online where what is happening and when? For example, there are tryouts this afternoon. If you're not part of a band, am I not right about that?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. So I'm glad you said that because I don't remember.
Okay, so
everything.
where do we go?
So you go to honkfest.org, honkfest.org. The schedule's there. All the list of bands are there. Everything's there. This afternoon from 3 to 5 at the Dillboy VFW in Davis Square, we're going to have a rehearsal for a pickup band. Anybody who plays music who's not in a band can come and join.
Can I tell you what the most fun is about this? I live on the Cambridge-Somerville line in Inman Square. It's huge fun when you go intentionally, which I have from time to time. The most fun is when you forget that it's happening and you happen upon the bands. It doesn't get any better than that. Let's hear some more music. Now, who is Maurizio, by the way? Did I pronounce that right? How close am I?
Hi.
Hi, I was close. And Camila, is she here? Camila. Oh, there you are too. Great. So let's talk to you for a second. First of all, what are we going to hear next, Maurizio? What are you playing next? Speaking of the mic.
Why not? Typical music from Bolivia.
From Bolivia. And Camila, can I talk to you for a second? When you organize back home, when you play back home and there are causes you care about in Chile, what are the causes? What are the issues that you're performing for? What do you care most about in your home country?
Well, we most of the time play at the street, most of the time, and we also get part of different community activities. So we try to be part of them and support.
You're also trying to change the Constitution, from what I understand, to get it more democratic, and I know that's been a tough go. Mm-hmm. So can we hear you, Rim Bam Boom, play yet a second time? This is like the best looking band, honest to God, I've ever seen. Number 2 song, Rim Bam Boom, let's hear it. I love it.
So let me ask you some practical questions. If people go
Thank
to
you.
Davis Square again to see the Honkfest, there's a route, right? Can people and is it like a parade kind of deal?
There are 5 stages spread out throughout Davis Square. So all people have to do is wander around Davis Square, and they can get the schedule on their phone on Saturday.
Okay.
The next day, on Sunday, there's a parade that goes from Davis Square to Harvard Square. And
Great.
in that parade are the bands and more than 50 community groups and activist groups that range from like Veterans for Peace to Save Alewife Brook to Extinction Rebellion, a whole range of grassroots and larger groups.
And
sorry, Ken.
I was going to say it's important for everyone to know that the festival is entirely free.
Oh, great.
There's no pay, just go.
And where does everybody stay? I mean, these guys came from Santiago.
Yeah.
Where do people stay?
We're in a special time, that because of COVID. So we didn't this year invite a lot of bands from afar, but we did invite these guys. And what we have done for years is bands from afar stay with people who volunteer their housing.
That's what I figured.
And so that's where they're
And it
staying.
really builds community and relationships. There are people who've become good friends with the bands that stay with them and request that band every year.
Did you say honkfest.org? Is it org?
Yes,
Honkfest.org. It is as much fun as it gets for good cause.
I make this joke all the time, but it's actually pretty disorg.
Really?
Yeah.
But
We
it's a really
should
good
mention-
joke. I'd stop making it if I were you, but that's your opinion.
We should mention that we're representing a larger committee of incredible volunteers who put thousands of hours and so much love and passion into this festival. There's no paid
You're
staff.
into that nobody's a leader thing, right?
Nobody's a leader,
equal.
right? It takes a while
we hate
to make
that kind
decisions.
of thing, but that's okay. Hey, before you go for a second, Ken, my understanding, maybe I'm wrong, is historically, when you've been here in the past, Sunday, there is an issue that everybody unites around. I think historically it was, and people with all disparate worldviews, literally and figuratively, march for that. Is Sunday not that? Is Sunday a broader spectrum of things?
It varies from year to year. Sometimes we have a certain thing that we are addressing, but not this year.
Great. We're going to hear First of all, thank you both, and we're thrilled to have you back again this year. We're going to hear a third and final song from Rim Bam Boom. I can't pronounce this one either. Does anybody want to yell out what the name of the song is? Exactly. That is correct. You got it right. Let's hear it one more time for Rim Bam Boom. Take it away.
Yeah.
Santiago, Chile, Rim Bam Boom. You guys are fabulous.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for coming in. We've been speaking with Ken Field and Cicely Miller from Honkfest, which runs today through the weekend. You can find more information at honkfest.org. Thank you very much for
That was
coming
great.
in.
Thank
you
you all.
very much.
Really
That was such a treat. Okay, we like to talk about big issues, activist issues on the show too. Prison reform, climate change, all the different things you can do with a Q-tip, Jim.
Exactly.
But next we're going to get to the really burning issue of the definitive way to cut a sandwich.
Yes, we are.
Horizontally or diagonally. I didn't know this was such a big deal. Apparently it is. After a quick break, you're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Activists, educate our right our phenomenon.
My name is Nikki Giovanni. I am a poet.
We're talking with Professor Giovanni about her new book, Hopes for the Future and the Wonders of Retirement. I'm Melissa Harris Perry, and that's next time on The Takeaway from WNYC and PRX.
This afternoon at 2, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you and Mass General Cancer Center, dedicated to providing compassionate care and cancer specialists who are experienced in the cancer you have. When you hear the word cancer, their team is ready. Learn more at massgeneral.org/cancer. And the Museum of Printing in Haverhill, preserving the rich history of graphic communication from typewriters and presses to computers and copiers, plus 8,000 books about typographic arts and crafts. museumofprinting.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan live at the Boston Public Library. We were just really live at the Boston Public Library.
I know, that was great.
Great. Streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Earlier this week, Emily Heil, I believe her name is, in the Washington Post, made a bold declaration. This is what she wrote, quote, "There are a few absolute ironclad rules that I think protect us from losing our tenuous hold on civilization and sliding into the chaotic abyss. And one of them is this. Sandwiches must be cut in half on the diagonal end of story." Well, not end of story, not even close. Marjorie and I apparently do those things differently. We're ending the show today by opening up to you, what's the ultimate way, really, to cut a sandwich? Is it horizontally through the middle? Is it diagonally, end to end, I guess you'd call it? Or is it not even cutting it at all? What about chopping off the crust like an adult baby kind of thing does? 877-301-8970. So what do you do, Marjorie?
Well, I have always cut sandwiches in half, but I think
obviously they're cut in half.
I mean,
diagonally?
horizontally. But I'm converted.
Wait, horizontally or diagonally?
Horizontally.
Halfway through.
That's right.
Not diagonally.
Not diagonally. Halfway through, like this, okay?
Okay.
But I realize
This is hopeless.
I've been doing it wrong all these years.
According to this woman.
I should be doing it diagonally. I didn't even think about that. And you know what I think I'm going to do from now on? Diagonally in fours. You know why? Think about a grilled cheese sandwich, diagonally in fours. And what do? You have your grilled cheese with your tomato soup, and you take the triangle and you just dip it right into the tomato soup. So I have a new frontier ahead of me, Jim.
Now, I want you to know, I do not cut diagonally. I cut horizontally. And except as Sue said, I think when I have a grilled cheese, I do what Sue said, which is without even thinking, I do the diagonal thing. Here's what we read this morning, which is quite interesting. According to psychological experts, when you slice on the diagonal, halves appear larger. That is just a theory, I guess. But what is absolutely true is there is more surface. There is more, what do they call that? There is more surface area when you slice diagonally. So, for example, in the average sandwich, according to what we read this morning, there's as much as 11 inches.
They call it crustless interior.
That's what I meant to say. Crustless, 11 inches as opposed to 8
inches
if you cut horizontally.
If you cut it halfway across. And it also talks about...
Well, it's always halfway, Margaret.
That's right, horizontally, I'm sorry. But they always talk about it, in the story, they talk about how it elevates the sandwich, Jim, and makes it more elegant, more pleasing to the eye, and better, as we said before, for dipping if you are inclined
'Cause he's got a point.
to dip your sandwich
Excellent point.
in the tomato soup or the chicken noodle soup or whatever you want to dip it in.
Can we take an expression I hate, a deeper dive, if I may?
Deeper dive.
What if you get a hamburger which is round as opposed to a Wendy's which is square?
Yeah.
Do you cut the hamburger in half or do you eat it as a whole?
I always cut the hamburger in half.
Wow. And why is that?
To see how it's cooked, to see if I can eat it.
Very
Because
smart.
sometimes you order a hamburger and it's
I
not
do.
the right thing, and then I have a bad habit of putting tons of salt on hamburgers, so I have to really, salt it up.
Yeah, well, it's not really our
extensively.
topic, but thank you for sharing
No,
that.
but-
Now, can I say one more thing about this before we take calls? We don't want you to call if all you're going to say is I do diagonal or horizontal. We want a reason. We want to know why you do what you do, because after I read this article, it is clear, which most of us have not thought about, most of us do the exact same thing with a sandwich. Time after time after time after again. So there must be a reason that we do that, and we want to know what yours
Well,
is.
I cut mine when we go to the office together, Jim. We're at the library today, in fours.
Why?
Because Jim has a habit of eating my lunch. If I cut it in fours,
That's true.
it's likely that he won't eat the entire thing. He'll only eat part of it, and I'll still have a little bit of it left to eat myself. The number is 877-301-8970, 877-301-8970. Let us start with Al on the road. Where are you on the great sandwich debate, Al?
Hey, Al.
How you doing, guys?
Great.
If you got a sandwich from your mother when you were little,
Yes.
and it was cut just in half and not diagonal, does she even love you?
That's a great point, Al.
Well,
that
here's
could
another
be
guy.
the problem for millions of people. It was a signal from Mom that she didn't.
So if the message from your mother, I assume, was she did the diagonal, have you followed that example your whole life, Al?
Pretty much, yeah.
And that's the reason.
Yeah, if I'm upset with my wife and I'm making a sandwich, she gets it cut in half.
Wow.
If things are going well,
Wow.
she gets the diagonal.
He means horizontal versus Al. That's a brilliant
Al.
start to the conversation. Thank you.
That's great. That's great.
By the way, do you want to know what people in this country as a whole? There's a huge, huge gap. 39% of all people cut diagonally.
Yep.
Only 20% horizontally. Does that surprise you? It's a 2-to-1
Yeah,
margin?
I figured I was in the majority on that, Jim. I did not know that I'm in the minority, and some people don't seem to care one way or the other.
And they're not. They didn't. This is YouGov, by the way, the polling.
Yeah.
More
And how about
people
the
who
Germans?
support Biden do it diagonally than those who support Trump. 41-37.
Germans apparently do not cut their sandwiches at all.
Why is that?
I
They
do
just
not
pick up
know.
the damn thing?
I do not know. They just pick up the whole thing and they just
Well,
eat
by
it.
the way, why do we cut a sandwich? Why don't we eat it? The whole
Because you don't
thing?
want to bite into the crust, do you? Unless you're doing it
Boy,
where...
that may be the. I never thought of that.
Well,
that's
what
probably
I,
the reason.
what I think. You like the middle of the sandwich. I mean, some people
Wow.
don't eat the crust at all.
I don't like that at all.
Even as adults.
Yeah.
And I think once again, if you do the diagonal and you cut it in fours, you never have to eat the crust.
So you have four triangles.
Four little triangles.
That's beautiful.
And you can start at the pointy end of the triangle and just work your way toward the crust and leave the crust entirely if you so choose.
Let me just say one thing.
This
I
has been a
mentioned this in
revolution for
passing.
me today, Jim.
I have contempt for people who cut the crust off food. I do. I know it's not right to be that judgmental.
Didn't you do it for your kids, though?
No.
You didn't?
No, I
Oh, my
forced them
goodness.
to eat it, or I sent them
my
to their
goodness.
room if they didn't. Let's go to 877-301-8970. Bree, you're in Salem. You're on Boston Public Radio. What's up?
Hi.
Hi.
So if I'm feeling fancy, I do the diagonal, and if I'm feeling basic, I just do the horizontal. So
That's a great point. Because that's what they say in these stories, Bree. The diagonal is supposed to be more sophisticated and elegant.
But why do you feel that?
Yeah.
Why do you feel that way?
And I put my pinky up when I eat the diagonal.
That's a good one,
Do you say
Bree.
tomato or tomato, Bree?
Tomato.
Tomato.
No,
Potato or potato.
Hey, Bree, thank you for the call. It's an interesting text from someone who doesn't sign it. It says, sandwich cutting is dictated by age. Toddlers, 4 squares, no crusts. Elementary kids, a diagonal cut. Big kids, no cut at all. Adults, horizontal. This is really interesting. Sandwiches taste different depending on the cut. This is CJ in Cambridge. CJ did sign it. I was wrong. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that's a good point because you do cut the crust off. At least I did for my kids when they were little.
No, how about tasting the difference? CJ's suggesting there's actually a different
I don't know.
feel.
I mean, I'm a big sandwich person. I'm really excited about as I said, my new frontier, my new diagonally cut sandwiches.
You haven't been cutting hamburgers your whole life, have you?
I always cut hamburgers.
No, I started cutting them
because you don't know. You don't want to find out that they're either too well done or
what
too
do you do
rare.
if it's not what you want? You throw it away?
No, you call the waiter and you say, or the wait person,
we call them servers now.
Servers and say, could you cook it a little bit more? Or
what if it's too well done?
Well, if it's really too well done and you can't eat it and it costs you
$15,
I think you have to send it back, don't
Excellent point. Rama, you're in Magnolia. You're on Boston Public Radio as we discuss one of the Zen issues of our time. Hi, Rama. What's up?
Amen. Zen. Namaste. Wow.
Exactly.
Hours and hours about this topic.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So, I'm about to eat a sandwich right now.
And?
However, it's a fairly small end of the French baguette, so it's not cut at all. But when I do a sandwich, regular like a loaf sandwich, a loaf of bread, old style sandwich, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
My mom used to go diagonal, so now if I can remember to do it in homage to my mom, I go diagonal. But I've usually done it horizontal my whole life. The last couple of years, I don't know why, maybe the pandemic and all the time on my hands, I started doing it diagonally for some reason. I was just thinking about this topic recently. So you guys discussed the best topic.
Well, we
really do. We get to the big issues, absolutely.
And boy, your mother would be proud, Rama. Thank you very much for your call. We appreciate it.
Okay, here's someone texting from us out in the audience here somewhere who says, and this is a very brilliant observation, Jim, triangles are so much more fun than rectangles.
Well, I can make that case. I really can make that case.
Really?
But
do you have experience with triangles?
You know why I think that is? Well, actually, I was going to say in my case because
what kind of triangles?
I do the isosceles for the most part. I try to cut all of my sandwiches in isosceles triangles. The only problem is I don't know what an isosceles triangle is. Jamie, what's an isosceles triangle?
I have no idea.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Ron in Seabrook, what's your deal?
Hi, I don't cut a sandwich unless it's too heavy to lift in one piece. But I have a pet peeve, though.
What is it?
We're ready.
Go to a sub shop. If you go to a sub shop and you get a sub and they cut it in half, it's always, horizontally through the middle.
Yeah.
But it's also always like cut through about 75%.
I am so with you.
Tear it apart with your fingers and make a bigger mess than if you didn't have it cut at all.
What is that about? Do you ever confront the sandwich maker about that? Because I've thought of that. How about you?
Well, I'm ashamed to go back in the store with the shreds of sandwich all over myself.
That's another good
tearing
point.
it apart,
So people do think about this. Do you know what he's talking about, Ron? Thanks for the call.
Yes, I do.
They don't cut all the way through. They cut, and so there's still a little bread connection at the bottom.
Well, listen to this. This is from Emily in Millis. I never thought of this, but she cuts hers into 3 pieces horizontally, so they're kind of like sandwich strips. And if you do it with a serrated knife, which is key, then you can kind of neatly do it. You have to use a serrated knife.
Wow, that's pretty incredible.
Isn't that interesting?
Actually.
And then you have the wraps, the small wraps. You ever make those?
Sure.
And those can be pretty manageable. But the big subs are tough.
How about? Ron raised an interesting question. That weight is the criterion for him.
Weight is a big deal.
That unless it's heavy, he doesn't cut at all. How do you respond to Ron?
I don't think I've ever had that heavy of a sandwich. Have you?
No, but then if you haven't,
I used to get the tuna at D'Angelo's.
They were heavy.
They were heavy.
A lot of water.
No, the tuna at D'Angelo's is great.
Oh.
Yeah.
What's the place where the tuna doesn't have any tuna?
I don't know, but the tuna at D'Angelo's is great.
Was the Subway? We shouldn't say because
the thing about D'Angelo's is they put tons of mayonnaise on their tuna.
Yeah, it's heavy
and it really tasted really good. Joe in New Bedford.
Wait a second. Isosceles triangle is a triangle that has at least 2 sides of equal length. So, that's a sandwich.
That's right.
So a sandwich cut diagonally is by definition an isosceles triangle.
Well, no, I think that's an even. The 3 sides are even in the sandwich.
No, they're not even.
Yes, they
2
are.
of the 3 sides are even.
No, all 3 of the sides are even.
I don't think so.
When you cut a square in half, you get.
No, you don't.
Yes, you do.
No, if you cut a square in half, all 3 sides are exactly the same.
On the triangle. I could be wrong, but I'm looking at it. I think I'm right. Aren't I right? Jamie's can't look.
Thank you. Joe from New Bedford, you're next on Boston Public Radio. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Great.
I love your show.
Thank you.
If you cut a sandwich if you go from corner to corner, you have a precise guideline to give you 2 even halves.
That's
Right,
brilliant.
that
That way
is
you're
correct.
not, you don't have to, as well, when you cut it horizontally, you risk getting peanut butter and jelly in the corners of your mouth when you bite into it.
By the way, you are a genius, but go ahead.
And thirdly, hacking away at some random point in the middle of the sandwich to cut it horizontally, well, we're not barbarians here. You know, you come out with misshapen pieces, and if you're a little bit OCD like me, the unevenness of the 2 halves would drive you nuts and make it throw you off your peanut butter and jelly.
By Joe, both your points were brilliant. Were you listening carefully to what he said?
I'm drawing triangles.
We read a lot of articles on this in the morning. I see the triangle, but I'm trusting.
Equilateral triangle, by the way.
Whatever. Thank
Equilateral,
you.
thank you.
Equilaterals are even.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So what do you think? Are the sandwiches equilaterals or are they isosceles, Joe? He's gone.
Thank you. No, but he makes 2 points that none of these articles made. If you want to have it precisely half and half the exact same size, you have to go diagonal, because if you're doing horizontal, you don't know if you're really in the middle. That's one. He makes another great point. You like peanut butter and jelly a lot.
No, peanut butter bananas,
Oh,
Jim.
sorry, peanut butter
Haven't you
banana.
noticed that?
If you cut diagonally, you can eat from the corner in. If you cut horizontally and you bite in the middle, as he said, you end up with peanut butter all over both sides of your mouth.
That is
Both
correct.
arguments are really good ones.
Okay, so are you changing your eating habits now that you've...
No, I don't know if I will. I'm just saying, historically, only grilled cheese do I cut diagonally. But the
Listen to
arguments
this.
in favor of diagonal are strong.
This is beautiful. I always cut on the diagonal because I love how it looks arranged on the plate next to a bowl of soup or fresh fruit. It shows care and love for whom I placed it in front of.
Well, by the way, most times when you go to a restaurant, if you do a tomato soup and grilled cheese thing, or an
It
onion
is
soup and
diagonal.
grilled cheese,
It is diagonal.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's go to the Coles.
Dave and Mattapoisett, thank
Hey,
you
Dave,
for calling.
welcome to the show. Hi.
Hello, guys. I
Hey.
got a couple of random points that you might have heard about before.
We'll
but
see.
I'm an older guy. We used to have grilled cheese in diners. They always served them on sandwich bread, not round top bread.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
You know, and that's why they cut them corner to corner. There are no corners on round top bread except for the 2 on the bottom.
Excellent point.
You can count them kind of clockwise, not clockwise, but diagonal left, diagonal right. You get the same thing with the sandwich loaf.
Those
are
great
good historical points. Dave, thanks for the call. This is a text from Liz from Alston, who
Yeah.
really nailed me. I learned on the Food Network to slice scallions diagonally or on a bias to make it look more fancy. Why is diagonal so fancy? And this is the part where she gets me. Full disclosure, I cut my Sammy's diagonal, parentheses, Jim is going to hate that I call it a Sammy, and it gives me hives when someone calls it a Sammy.
That's a sandwich?
A lot of
Short.
people call them Sammy. How do you feel about that?
I've never heard that in my life.
I don't like it. Do you like it?
I've never heard it before.
You
I don't-
agnostic on it? Or
I
what?
don't think I will embrace it.
No, nor will I.
No.
Jim
it's
and
like
Ro-
people that call soda tonic.
No, it's not. This
No.
is This is a horrible abbreviation.
It's changing the name of something.
It is true.
Yeah, some people around here call soda tonic.
I know they do.
I don't like it at all.
Let's go to Jim in Rhode Island. You're next
It's
on Boston
outrageous,
Public
Jim.
Radio. We're talking about horizontal versus diagonal sandwich slicing. Hi, Jim. Say something, Jim.
Hi, Jim.
Excellent call, Jim. Thank you
Hi.
very much.
Oh,
there he is. Sorry.
Who are you looking for?
You.
Hi.
Who
Jim
are
from
you?
South County.
Who?
I'm doing. I'm getting a little reverb coming through.
Turn
But number one, I realized my mother didn't love me because she didn't cut my sandwiches on the diagonal.
Well,
but
tell your
but
shrink.
a much more important point. I'm a science tech guy. There's a big difference between a horizontal cut and a vertical cut. If you cut it horizontal, facing the sandwich with the little rounded top, if you cut it vertically, you have symmetric halves of a sandwich. If you cut it horizontally, one side has the little round, puffy part, and the other side is just the square. So that has to be addressed also in this discussion.
Well, that's a good point, except the one thing you're missing, it is true, if there's an sort of an aberrational side, if it's not 4 equal sides, that's a problem. But the point that you're missing, if I may, since you're a scientist, I say this with some respect, the guy who called before and said, even if you do horizontally, up and down, or vertically as you call it, they're still not necessarily equal because you're making a guess, as opposed to when you do a diagonal cut, when you know that the 2 sides are exactly the same. But as I'm speaking, that wouldn't be the case if you have a round top, so I give up. Jim, thank you for the call. We appreciate it.
Listen to this. Adam in Somerville, he's really given a lot of thought to this whole question, Jim. Adam says it's important to apply an heuristic, I can never pronounce that word, heuristic, H-E-U-R-I-S-T.
I don't know how to say it.
Heuristic approach to each sandwich individually. How dense or thick is the bread? Is it toasted? Are there slippery toppings like avocados? In much the same way, different layerings of toppings changes a sandwich experience. The utility of a cut must be carefully considered.
That's beautiful.
Isn't that beautiful?
By the way, we have an update on the Attorney General's office got back to us. We were discussing that cop, a state cop, Keefe, who got a fine that appears to be the same, if not less, than the amount of money he stole from the taxpayers for overtime he didn't work. The AG's office tells us that Keefe pled guilty. Part of the deal is the decision on his pension goes to the Public Employee Retirement Administration Commission to decide. So it's still an open question. Now, you're looking cynically because you think they're in the tank too. Is that what your concern is?
I think he will probably keep his pension.
Well, it's still up in the air.
Which I think is tough for people to accept.
I would say the same thing. Bella in Boston, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Thank you much for the call. Hi.
Of course. Hello.
Hello to you.
Hi. So, yeah, I wanted to follow up on the caller before who said that if you cut it in half as opposed to diagonal, you get peanut butter and jelly on your corner of your mouth.
Yes, I did say that.
I wholeheartedly agree with. I also think for grilled cheese sandwiches specifically, if you cut it on a diagonal, you have the perfect corner for dipping into your tomato soup.
Amen.
Which you don't get with a half slice up and down or sideways.
Well, don't you think that's why restaurants, when they serve a grilled cheese with a bowl of soup, that's the reason
That's why
it's
they
cut
do
on the
it.
diagonal? Don't you think, Bella?
They are the professionals, so we should follow their lead and know that that's what works.
But don't we really, Bella, have to cut it in fours if we're going to do it that way? Because don't you want to dip the point of the grilled cheese?
Oh, you have extra points.
The extra points into the tomato soup.
Excellent. What do you think, Bella?
I do like those sandwich bites. That is a good idea.
Yeah.
Those little, they have those little, like uncrusted peanut butter and jelly round sandwiches as well.
Yeah.
That one's fun. So that one you don't have to cut at all. That's just a circle.
Bella, another person who's thought about this quite a bit.
Now-
Bella, thank you for your call.
A lot of people are criticizing us, Jim, saying we should be saying a vertical cut, not a horizontal cut.
No, they're wrong. The vertical cut, the guy who was called a minute ago, who's the scientist, said, he's talking about, you know the kind of bread you get like a loaf in a plastic bag from the supermarket?
Yeah.
It's got a round top.
Right.
So his point is, if you want to make it symmetrical, the only way it can be symmetrical is to cut it in half vertically, not diagonally, vertically.
Okay.
Right there. You know what I'm talking about? Or
Yeah.
no?
That's not how they usually cut bread.
When we were kids, loaves of bread, crappy bread that you bought at the
You couldn't
supermarket.
cut it.
No, no, it was actually too soft. You could cut it.
It
you're
was
saying
too
it's so
soft to
spongy
cut.
you couldn't
Yeah,
even cut.
I don't think so. It was very difficult. That's why you had to put it down on a cutting board and then cut it with a serrated knife. Sunbeam bread, which I lived on when I was a kid. Boy, I tell you, think about the foods my mother fed me. It was very bad.
Can I
Jim.
tell you, but I can't believe you haven't asked the question. One of the things Marjorie's ridiculed me about for the 20-some years we worked together is that my mother, who was always concerned about my health, before I went to bed every night, gave me a Hebrew National salami sandwich to eat as I was lying in bed to go with an extra slice on top. Can't believe you have no interest in how she cut that sandwich.
God, Jim, I'm embarrassed to say I did not follow up. How did your sainted mother
Well, remember
cut
the first
sandwich?
caller said, if your mother loves you, she
Yeah.
cuts the sandwich diagonally? My mother did not. So draw your own conclusions.
Yes, she did.
I didn't
Yes,
say,
she
no,
did.
I don't mean the love thing. You can draw that. I'm saying she did not cut it diagonally. That's
Okay, she did not cut it down.
That's it.
Jim. Okay. Thank you very much for listening
Thank
to another
you.
edition to Boston Public Library, Boston Public Radio. Excuse me, we are at the Boston Public Library. Thank you to people who came down to the Boston Public Library, and we've had
Thank you all for coming.
a fun time today. I ate too many donuts, but except for that, everything's great. Tune in Monday for some great financial advice from Michelle Singletary, who writes a terrific financial column at the Washington Post, and she's great about how surviving things like inflation and recession and what you can do. We'll also hear from retired federal judge Nancy Gertner, food policy analyst Corby Kummer, Salem Mayor and Democratic Lieutenant Governor candidate Kim Driscoll, ahead of this year's Halloween celebration up in Salem, which is always huge, and Mitra Kalita of URL Media and Levi Rickard from Native News uncovering the midterms. Our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Mackenzie Farkas. Additional support provided by Gia Orsino and Fernando Cervantes. Our engineer is John the Fall Parker. Our executive producer is Jamie Bologna. Special thanks to BPL engineering team, especially today with the band here from Honkfest, Sai Patel, Colin Cockrell, and Angelica Marrero. You're not on TV tonight.
No, I'm not, but let me just
Callie
say one
Crossley is Basic Black at 7:30, and Jared Bowen's Open Studio at 8:30.
And that list you made for Monday.
Oh, and Adam Riley at 7, sorry.
One of the reasons why Judge Gerger being here is so important, it's always important, is we're going to talk about the Supreme Court docket for this year. Obviously, they went into session this past Monday. It is potentially life-altering, and you should tune in. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. I'm Jim Browley.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Thanks again for tuning in. Hope you can tune in again on Monday. And as Jim said, hope you have a great weekend. Bye.
Thanks.